Education Forum. Day 2 will begin very soon at 2 p.m.
새로 오신 분들께서는 가운데 자리로 오시면은
We have many empty seats towards the front of the venue. Please, if possible,
가운데 쪽으로 나오기
sit
때문에요.
towards the front of the venue.
우리 참석자
You'll be able to see the speaker better and listen to the
더
presentation better. So if you're sitting towards the back of the venue, please come forward.
앞쪽으로 와주시면
Please sit towards the front of the venue,
아울러
please.
원활한 행사 진행을 위해서 행사가 진행되는 동안에는
Also, for the smooth progress of the program, please set your phones to silent mode during the session.
또한 오늘 행사는 동시 통역 서비스.
Moreover, we have simultaneous interpretation services for today's event. Please use the receivers provided on each table, channel 1 for Korean and channel 2 for English. Please select the channel for your preferred language.
또한 안전한 행사 진행을 위해서
Also, for your safety, we'd like to provide emergency evacuation guidance. In the event of an emergency, please follow the evacuation route displayed on the screen
현장에 배치된 안전요원의 안내
and calmly proceed according to the instructions of the staff members on site.
화면에서 안내되는 가장 가까운 출구를
Please
확인하셔서
identify the nearest exit indicated on the screen and move safely to the designated evacuation area. We'll shortly begin the forum at 2 p.m. So please enter the venue and sit towards the front of the venue, please. Thank you.
아마 저기 뒤쪽 사이드에 계신 분들께서는 여기 강연을 하실 때 가려서 잘 안 보이실 수가 있습니다. 제가 앞쪽에 자리가 많이 남아 있으니까요. 자리 이동하시면 더욱더 유익하게 포럼을 즐기실 수 있으니까요. 참고해 주시기 바랍니다. 네, 감사합니다. 앞쪽으로 이동해 주시면 더욱더 유익하게 또 깊은 인사이트를 함께 나눠보실 수 있으실 겁니다. 안내에 따라서 이동 부탁드립니다. 감사합니다. 앞쪽에 자리가 굉장히 많이 남아 있습니다.
We have many empty seats towards the front of the venue. So if you're just entering the hall, please come forward to the front of the venue, please.
앞서서 어떤 분께서 입장하시면서 이런 말씀을 하시더라고요.
Also,
이왕이면 앞쪽에 앉지 가운데 앉지.
Earlier, I heard someone saying that it's better to sit in the front.
지금 입장하신 분들
So if you're just entering the hall,
가에 사이드에 앉아
and
계신
even if you're
분들께서도
seated,
지금
if you're
앞쪽
towards
자리가
the
많이
back
남아
or
있습니다.
towards the
앞쪽으로
corners, please
이동하시면
come
더욱더
forward
좋을 것 같습니다. 감사합니다.
to listen to the presentations better. Thank you very much.
네, 어서 오십시오. 잠시 후 2시부터 행사가
Welcome to the forum. We'll soon begin the forum at 2 p.m.
입장하지 않으신
If you haven't
분들께서는
entered the
행사장내로
hall,
입장하여 주시고 자리에 착석해 주시기
please be seated
바랍니다.
as soon as
오늘
possible.
날이 춥습니다. 추운 날씨에도
The weather is
불구하고
pretty
함께해
chilly
주셔서
today.
너무나도
Thank you so much for
감사드리고요.
coming despite the
지금
weather.
입장하시는 분들께서는 앞쪽의 자리가 아직
If
많이
you're entering the
남아
hall right
있습니다.
now,
앞쪽부터
please note that we have many empty
좌석부터
seats towards the front of the hall, so please
또한 원활한
be
행사
seated
진행을
towards
위해서
the
소지하고
front.
계시는 휴대전화는 필히 무음 모드
Also, for the
진동
smooth
모드로
progress of the event,
전환해
please make
주시기
sure that your
바랍니다.
phones are turned on silent mode.
또한 오늘은 동시 통역 서비스를
Also, we have simultaneous interpretation services for today's forum.
채널
Please use the
1번이
receivers on your table, channel 1 for Korean and channel 2 for English.
원하시는 언어를
Please select the channel for your preferred language.
혹시 이용에 불편함이 있으신 분들은 주변 스태프분들에게 도움을 요청하시면
If you're unsure how to use the receiver, please reach out to our operating staff at the venue. And for your safety, we'd like to provide emergency evacuation guidance. In the event of an emergency, please follow the evacuation routes displayed on the screen and calmly proceed according to the instructions of the staff members on site. Please identify the nearest exit on the screen and move safely to the designated evacuation area. We'll soon begin the forum at 2 p.m. Everyone, please be seated as soon as possible, and if possible, please be seated towards the front. Thank you.
네, 앞쪽에 자리 있습니다. 마련되어 있습니다.
We also have many seats in the front, so if you're just entering the hall, please fill the seats in the front. Thank you.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 2025 K-Edu Expo
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the 2025 K-Edu Expo International Education Forum.
K-Edu Expo. I'm your host 김태은. 네, 저는 오늘 행사 진행을 맡은 아나운서 김태은입니다. 만나서 반갑습니다. 네. 오늘이 국제 교육 포럼의 둘째 날입니다. 혹시
Today is the day 2 of the 2025 K-Edu Expo International Education Forum. I see some familiar faces today,
교육에 대한 관심이 뜨겁다라는 것이
which reflects the significance of the theme AI and education. Yesterday, on the first day of the forum, we reflected on rethinking life, exploring the meaning of human dignity and life in the age of AI.
결론적으로 선택권은 우리의 손에 있고
Choices are in the hands of humans. That's why we have to feel the responsibility to shape the future. Creativity, autonomy, and critical thinking, these are some unique characteristics of human beings. We have to protect these values while utilizing AI. So that was the lesson from day 1. Today, continuing from that discussion, we'll focus on rethinking education. We'll explore the direction and role of education with many experts today. We're living in the era of AI. Education will inevitably go through changes with the wave of AI. I'm sure that in your daily lives, ChatGPT is making changes, including in the lives of our students. ChatGPT passed the doctor exam in the USA, and also ChatGPT passed the MBA entrance exam, and ChatGPT is capable of writing papers. And also, ChatGPT is able to answer some very philosophical and sophisticated questions. And looking at these phenomena, a lot of people think that homework or assignments in high schools and colleges are no longer useful. But some people, on the other hand, say that we have to embrace this change. With a lot of expectations and concerns, how can we shape education for our future generations? We'll find some answers in today's forum. We have invited some experts and distinguished guests from home and abroad to discuss the future educational paradigm and the direction that we should be headed. Please stay with us until the end and gain some insights regarding the future vision. I'm sure that you all have the booklet for today's forum. The book on the table is the forum booklet. So inside the booklet, there is a QR code. Please scan the QR code using your mobile phone, and you should be able to download the presentation materials. So please refer to the presentation slides while listening to the presentations for better understanding. And also, if you turn to the very back page of the booklet, there's another QR code. Please scan this and you should be able to participate in the satisfaction survey. Please participate, and it will greatly help us plan better events next year and the years ahead. Now let us begin day 2 of the 2025 K-Edu Expo International Education Forum, Rethinking Education, with our first session. I'll first introduce our distinguished guests. Please welcome them with a big round of applause, everyone.
경상북도교육청
Ms. Lee Hyun-hwa, Director General for Education from 경상북도 Office of Education.
경상북도 경주교육지원청의 황영애 교육장님 자리해 주셨습니다.
Ms. 황영애 from 경상북도 Office of Education in
제가 이곳에 왔더니요.
the Division of Planning.
손을 이렇게 흔들어주면서 환영해 주더라고요. 이 학생들을 이끌어가고
We also have a lot of students here, and let us introduce the leaders.
경주공업고등학교의 배용수 교장님 자리해 주셨습니다.
And we have Mr. Bae Young-soo from Gyeongju High School.
네, 이 밖에도 많은 분들께서 참석해 주셨습니다. 오늘 또 추운 날씨에도 불구하고
And we have
또
many
기쁜
other
마음으로
guests
함께해 주신
today.
모든 여러분들께
Thank you so much for
감사의
joining
말씀,
us despite your
환영의
busy
말씀
schedule and
전해
despite the
올립니다.
chilly weather.
자, 그럼 먼저 기조 강연을 청해
And now
듣도록 하겠습니다.
we'll begin with
미국
the
스탠퍼드 대학교에서 스탠퍼드 러닝
first lecture.
엑셀레이터 대표를 맡고 계신 이자벨
Miss Isabel Howe, Executive Director of the Stanford Accelerator for Learning at Stanford University in the U.S. She will deliver a keynote speech on the topic The Future of Learning, Expanding Human Connection Beyond Technology. Please join me in giving her a big round of applause, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is such an honor for me to be with all of you for K-Edu 2025 during the EPEC Summit. My name is Isabel Howe, and I have the great privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Stanford Accelerator for Learning. And also, I am the author of a book called Love to Learn. I just wanted to first share a few words about Stanford University and its role on artificial intelligence. A professor at Stanford University in computer science coined the word artificial intelligence in the 1950s, in 1956 exactly. So Stanford University has been doing a lot of work on artificial intelligence for now many years. More recently, about 5 years ago or so, Stanford University also invented diffusion models that are the basis of generative AI models that we know today. I would also add that one of our graduate students started Google, and then another one dropped out, Sam Altman, and he started OpenAI. So we have had, as a university, a lot of ties with artificial intelligence. But what I wanted to share today comes not only from my work, but also from my heart. And let me maybe begin with a question for all of you. When you think back about a moment, one of your deepest moments of learning, what comes to mind? Is it maybe a textbook, a device, a test, AI? Or was it a person? A teacher, maybe, a teacher who believed in you. Maybe a friend who picked you up in a low moment. Or maybe a parent or caregiver who showed up when it mattered most. Chances are that it was a relationship, a human relationship. Because what matters most in learning is this, is human relationships. And today, I want to speak for a moment about the why. We all have a why. Why do we work in education, all of us? For me, when I was 3 years old, I was a late everything. I was a late to walk, late to talk. So my parents had me take a psychological test. The evaluation came back and said I had low academic aptitude, which means that I would have had very low chance in life. Not a great outcome for parents at 3 years old. But my parents continued to shower me with a lot of love, and then they did something that at the time may not have been considered that special, but it ended up being one of those turning moments for me. They enrolled me into a high-quality early childhood education center where I received some specialized supports and a lot of nurturing care from my teachers, which changed my life. So when I reflect back on my very own journey, which would lead me to Harvard University and then more recently to Stanford, so the low academic aptitude is well behind me, I think that two things really made a huge difference. One was starting early, the early years of life, and then two, the relationships, whether the love from my parents or the nurturing care that I received from my early childhood teachers, including one that I still see on a very, very regular basis because she still lives in the village where I was born. So today I want to take you on this journey into the science of human connection, into this revolution that is underway of artificial intelligence, and into why we need what I called a relovetion, a revolution of love and learning. But let me start with the science first, the science of human relationships. I like to say that we are all born billionaires. Not necessarily from a money perspective, but certainly from a neural perspective. So we are all born as humans with about 100 billion neurons. Imagine that. These 100 billion neurons need to be connected. So they are waiting to fire up, they are waiting to connect with each other and form those trillions of pathways that allow us to learn. These neurons, different from a lot of other animal species, need one thing. They need human relationships, what my colleagues at Harvard University are calling serve and return interactions. Serve and return interactions are the exchange of a voice, the exchange of a touch, like here on this image, a dad playing with his little girl and reading with her. All those moments of interactions are what build what is being called in science synaptic connections in our brains. And now let me share two interesting research on why this matters. The first one is in a very sobering setting called the Romanian orphanages, which is one of the very, very few settings where we have been able to, as researchers, to look at the impact of the lack of relationships at scale. So anywhere between 100,000 young children to now upward of 500,000 young children, those are the latest estimates, were left behind in those Romanian orphanages with very little nurturing and care. What research has shown is that those children, in absence of love and strong nurturing love, have had essentially an atrophy of the brain. Their brain size is about 10% in average smaller than those who were adopted in loving families. We can also observe in those brains much meaningfully lower activity for those children who were raised in those orphanages relative to those children who were raised in loving families. On the positive side, there is a very interesting set of studies from my colleagues at Washington University that show that nurturing maternal care has also a very big positive impact on the hippocampus, the front part of our brains that's responsible for memory and learning. Hippocampus size is greater by about 10% as well for those who have had more nurturing care from their parent relative to other children. And our brains as humans are literally wired to connect. We can observe this from the very few days of life where the part of our brain that's constantly on default, the default network of our brain, is the one that is wired to connect to other human beings. And that's not a coincidence, that's a survival skill for us as humans. We can also observe what is called, in the latest cutting-edge science, brain synchrony. So there are 2 labs in the world that has these very expensive machines called MEG, where you can have 2 people at the same time and look inside their brains. One in Japan and one at the University of Washington in the US, because those machines are so incredibly millions of dollars. What you can do is that you can see the synchronization of the brain between a mother and their child when a mother speaks to their child relative to other interactions. So here is a point, I think, that love and relationships is not a soft extra in education. It is a neurobiological condition for learning and for brain development. So relationships regulate stress. They release oxytocin, the bonding hormone that strengthens memory and motivation. And it doesn't stop in adulthood. Research shows that the quality of the teacher-student relationship, many of you are teachers and know this, is one of the greatest predictors of academic success. The other really interesting data point is having a friend in kindergarten is also one of the greatest predictors of academic motivation for a child. So whether it's a teacher or a peer, having the circle of relationships is very critical for children to succeed in academic and later life success. One other data point, it's in high school, if there are high school teachers in the room, the number of strong connections, which you can see here on each one of those axes, drives a number of factors that are related to academic success, such as academic motivation. Relationships also have a huge impact on well-being. It's pretty obvious, this point, but let me, the numbers are incredible. A strong child-parent connection increases the odds of flourishing in a child by 12 folds, 12 times. The other data point that I love is from one of our colleagues in the UK, who I believe has the best job on this planet. He studies baby laughter. And he has shown that if a baby is by themselves, relative to a baby with a peer or in a group, the baby laughs 8 times more when they are in presence of a peer. Relationships drive well-being. They drive how we as humans relate to others. So just in summary, this is a summary slide, but relationships drive brain development, as we saw. Relationships also drive learning. Relationships are a big conditions of well-being, academic success, resilience. One of my favorites here on this slide is peak performance. So that's also cutting-edge science on athletes. The difference between a gold medalist and a silver medalist often For example, if you think about swimming, this final lap of a swimmer as an athlete is actually often connected to someone thinking about a person that they love. We also know, by the way, that athletes very often have coaches. Most athletes have coaches. So again, the importance of relationships in performance is really interesting. And then if you needed one more data point, relationships also drive greater longevity in adulthood. So if you have more friends in later life, you live longer. But so why does this matter now, maybe more than ever? Is because, as we heard from yesterday, we are living in the middle of two massive revolutions. One is the rise of artificial intelligence. The other one is a decline in human connections. And let's look at the numbers for a moment. Those are US numbers. But in the US now, despite the American Association of Pediatrics recommending very little usage for very young children of any device, now 40% of our little ones under age 2 have their own device. The other number that I like on this slide is this one on the right. It's the average number, again, it's a US number, the average number that any adult in the US picks up their device and checks it on a daily basis. The average in the US is 205 times. Which means that any adult in the US who is interacting with a child has more than 200 opportunities to be interfered with some form of technology in this beautiful relationship or interaction with a little one, whether it's reading a book or playing or discussing a matter. You can check your very own average on your phones. Mine is a little bit higher than 205, I may admit. But you can easily check yours and see where you are on this. It's a very interesting stat for us also as parents, as educators, on how we use technology and how technology interferes with our lives and with raising children. What scientists call technoference, the interference of technology in our lives and in our relationships. We can also look at what I call the shrinking village, where we have shrinking families, fertility rates going down, certainly in the world, in the US, in Korea. Also, friendships are decreasing meaningfully for young people. Over the past decades, the number of number of friends that any teen has decreased by about 40%. And then, as a result of adults being less connected with each other, there are also fewer mentors and adults in our children's lives. One stat that I thought was really interesting in my research is only 3% of children in the US have met an adult above age 65 who is not a family member. So we increasingly live in societies where little ones and older people are not connecting, are not seeing each other, are not playing with each other, are not benefiting from those critical relationships. Meanwhile, you have AI and AI companionship that are rising. You may know this already, but for adults, the number one use case of AI is actually not education, although education is actually quite high as well. But the number one use case of AI is friendship and therapy. For younger children, so there were two really interesting studies done about a month ago, or revealed about a month ago, one in the UK and one in the US on AI companions. The one in the US from Common Sense Media showed that more than 70% of teenagers have used one of these AI companions, and then more than 50% of teenagers are using one of those AI companions on a regular basis. And I know it's a global phenomenon. I'm not familiar with Korea and how young people are using those AI companions, but I know in China, Xiaoqie, for example, is a widely used platform for AI companionship. So, there are some positive elements of those AI companion platforms. One is that they can maybe reduce loneliness, and they are filling this void of isolation for our kids. But on the other hand, they clearly risk displacing what makes us human, with these very, very human bonds of interacting with friends and in real life friends. So we've done a study of one of those AI companion tools called Replica.ai. Replica.ai is a platform where you go and you create an avatar, and then you start conversing with that avatar. Okay? So our research showed four very interesting conclusions. Number one, people who are using Replica.ai are more lonely than average. So clearly, people who are interested in those AI companions tend to feel this void, this us humans being wired to connect. Two, 90% of humans believe the interaction with a machine is human-like after a very, very short amount of use of any of those AI companion platforms. 90%, 90. So most of us are psychologically confused on whether it's a machine interaction or a human interaction. Third conclusion is that people who use these platforms, we are showing a slight displacement of human relationships as a result of using those platforms. So quite concerning, because people are more lonely when they use those platforms and then have less in real life friends after using a lot of those platforms. And then the last conclusion, which is a little bit more positive, is that we show a slight benefit in mental health as measured by suicidal ideation as a result of using those platforms. But I would watch out for overusage outside of Replica.ai, because there have been a lot of concerns about other platforms that are similar. So that's, I think, really the paradox that we face at the moment. It's technology is racing ahead, as we all know, but human connection is falling behind. And so if we don't act with a lot of intentionality, we really risk raising a generation that is more wired to screens than to people. Most of my work is on AI, so it's not all doom and gloom, okay? Let's be clear. AI holds actually extraordinary possibilities and promise for learning. So AI can adapt to each learner's needs. It can translate into multiple languages. It can provide instant feedback. We are doing a lot of work on feedback at Stanford University right now. It can also scale high-quality education to places where teachers are more scarce. So a lot of potential with this technology. That's really the promise. But the perils are also real. So one that we heard yesterday is this over-reliance on AI tutors that can displace this teacher-student bond that's at the essence of learning, this human relationship that fuels motivation, curiosity, and resilience. I would also note, and this may be interesting for some of you, that the research base on the impact of AI and education, so whether it's a promise or a peril, is very limited at this point. So we have a site in my team that's called the Research Repository on AI and Education. It's a free website with all global research on AI and education. And you can search by age group and by subject, and also by type of research. If you look at the highest level of research, what is considered randomized controlled trials, here is what we have found. Only 35 randomized controlled trials have been done to date. And a lot of those research are very small sample. A lot of them are not peer-reviewed yet. And they are very specific to very narrow subjects. So if anyone claims that they know that AI works or not, that's not true. The research is still very, very nascent and emerging and very, very specific to very narrow studies at the moment. We are also seeing some really interesting phenomenon globally. One is the Flynn effect reversal. So for a very long time, since IQ was discovered and implemented about 150 years ago or so, there has been every decade a rise of human intelligence as measured by IQ, what people call the Flynn effect. And over the past few decades, now 20 years or so, there is more and more documentation across the world that we are seeing a decline in IQ. And one of the hypotheses that I personally have is because we know from anthropology that our brain size are optimized for the number of relationships with what Robin Dunbar has called the 150 Dunbar number. We know that if we are losing human connections, maybe there is some impact on our brains. So what is a way forward with AI and this loss of human connections? I believe that this future in front of us needs to be a co-evolution. It's not about AI or humans, it's about co-evolving between machines and humans. And here are the 4 C's of human AI learning. First, I think we need co-learning. So AI should strengthen humanity by supporting responsive and collaborative learning. 2 is co-engagement. So moving beyond access to true creativity, as we heard from the speaker from OECD yesterday, but also collaboration and deep learning, an area where we are also doing work at Stanford University. Third is co-design, building AI with educators, with families, with communities, with students, so that equity is baked in from the start. And then fourth but not least, co-verification, this trust that we will increasingly need for critical questioning and fact-checking that can only happen together. So here is what I think we need. We need at this point what I called a revolution, a relationship revolution. In this age of AI, human relationships are not less important. They are actually more precious than ever. And in many ways, we need to almost relearn how to design for connection. So how does that look like? In families, it means turning screen time maybe into more relational time, co-viewing, shared activities, maybe device-free dinners. In schools, it means investing in teachers for who they are, these relational brain builders. That means for teachers to greet every child, every student at the door. It's also creating the space for those peer friendships among students and valuing student and family voice in all our education environments. In communities, it means building a lot more of those intergenerational connections that have been fading. Building some of those neighborhood hubs of care and connection. And then in technology, which I know a lot of you are very interested in, it means building tools that augment human connection instead of replacing it. I have one example here one of my favorite examples at Stanford University. It's called the Autism Glass Project. So you can see this little boy is wearing some glasses. Those funky glasses are equipped with computer vision technology. And it allows this young boy, who is on the autism spectrum, and is not able to detect in emotions, as many of you know, if you are on the autism spectrum, you have a very hard time detecting in emotions. So thanks to this technology, this young boy is able to recognize the emotion of his mom, again, across from him, maybe for the first time. That is an example of a technology that enhances human connections, not replaces it. Or another example here is an incredible community in the US, in Florida, called Tangelo Park, where they are implemented relationships and education as a way and a mechanism to reinforce each other. And the community has made incredible progress in just a few years as a result of this relational infrastructure that they have built. So those are just a few examples. I'm sure there are many of them in Korea here of what could be a relational infrastructure. And they remind us that connection can actually be designed. We just need to choose to prioritize it. So artificial intelligence will continue automating a lot of tasks. As a result, the most valuable skills are shifting in this future of work that's already upon us. And some of those skills are communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, compassion, adaptability, or what my colleagues at the Stanford Digital Economy Lab are calling the human agency scale, which I love. We are moving more and more toward this concept of human agency, which is very close to relationships. Above all of those skills, I believe that there is one skill that's emerging as one that's almost like the top skill of this future, which is in front of us. And I have given it a name. I call it relational intelligence. So we all know IQ. which has been a form of cognitive intelligence for all of us for a long time. More recently, there has been the emergence of EQ, emotional intelligence. But I believe we are at a point in our human evolution where we are going to see the emergence and the need for all of us to be able to connect and relate to others, which is what I call relational intelligence. I think this is a superpower of tomorrow's leaders, not to master machines, but to master relationships. So let me return to where maybe we began. So think again about that powerful learning moment in your life. Who was there? Teacher, parent, a friend, a human being. Often a teacher, actually. Most people answer a teacher. For me, it was a teacher, as I explained. That is the architecture of learning. To love to learn, we must first learn to love. So my invitation for all of you is very simple. In your classroom, in your workplace, in your home, design for connection. Choose love as a literacy. Build relational infrastructure. Because the future belongs not just to those who can use AI, but to those who can use AI while staying deeply, profoundly human. Thank you.
네, 이자벨 하우 대표님의 강연이었습니다.
Thank you so much,
사실 우리가
Ms. Howe. It was a wonderful
제가 6살,
presentation.
4살 아들 엄마입니다.
I'm also a mother of two children, 6 and 4 years old.
굉장히 어릴 때부터 입시 현장에 또 뛰어들고 있거든요. 7세 고시가 또 문제가 됐더니 6세 고시가 또 문제가 된다.
They were young. They
그 교육 현장에서
have been involved in a lot of education, child education, infant education have been
하우님께서
significant these days.
묻고
But
있는데
Ms. Howe emphasized that relationship is at the center of everything.
현장의 그 순간들을 사진 찍어서 따님께 보내시더라고요.
Ms. Howe and I are actually staying at the same hotel, but I saw her that she's taking pictures of every moment and sending them to her daughter. It shows how love and relationship is at the center of everything. Thank you so much for the wonderful insights. And now let's move on to the lectures. And first lecture is
마리아 메르세데스 로드리고 교수님께서 해주시겠습니다.
I would like to invite Ms. Maria Mercedes Rodrigo. She will be speaking on advancing education equity through culturally responsive AI. Please give her a big round of applause.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maria Mercedes Rodrigo. I am a professor from the Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines, and it is my honor and my pleasure to be speaking before you today at the 2025 APEC International Education Forum. My goal for this talk is to share with you some thoughts and ideas about how we can advance educational technology and educational equity through the use of culturally responsive artificial intelligence. The exploration of this topic is divided into 6 parts. I will begin by talking about some of the gaps in worldwide educational systems. I will discuss the interaction between culture and education. I will give specific examples of how cultural environments and constraints at the student, classroom, and school and national levels determine actual usage and educational outcomes of AI technology. And finally, I will discuss the possible approaches to addressing these problems. The 2025 KEDI report entitled Digital Education, Expansion of New Opportunities or Another Name for Inequality points out that digital literacy is closely related to socioeconomic background. Students with higher digital literacy are more able to use digital resources effectively. Unsurprisingly, socioeconomic status influences digital literacy, meaning those with greater access to resources progress more quickly, while those with less access tend to fall further behind. The report further points out that despite Korea's superior digital access, classroom use of digital technologies is low. Increasing digital access does not necessarily build important cognitive skills. There is a need to use technology to support higher ordered thinking skills, such as creative learning, critical thinking, and reasoning and analytical skills, as well as self-regulation and metacognition. We should add as well the ability to build relationships. These observations are true about Korea and other nations as well. This is especially true when AI-based technologies pervade all sectors from business to health to education. To those of us working in the education sector, the question arises, how do we design, develop, and use AI-based educational applications to promote greater equity and create better, more effective learning experiences? One approach is to create and use educational applications that are culturally responsive. Thus, technological innovations should lead students to subject matter mastery and must enable them to use their skills to better understand, engage with, and thrive in their respective contexts. At this point, let us define what exactly we mean by culture. So culture refers to ever-changing values, traditions, social and political relationships, and worldviews created, shared, and transformed by a group of people bound together by a combination of factors, such as a common history, geographic location, language, social class, and religion. It includes content and product. It includes process, the how, and the agents of culture, the who. Culture has 4 fundamental properties. It is holistic in that it encompasses the elements characterizing the life of a group. It is shared, so individuals within the group can adhere to a set of values and standards. It is transmittable from one generation to the next, and it continues to evolve. The literature is rich with frameworks that may be used to characterize a community's culture. One of the most popular frameworks is that of Hofstede's 5 dimensions. A community can be characterized by power distance, or the extent to which less powerful people accept differences in power. Individualism versus collectivism refers to the primacy of the individual or the group. Masculinity versus femininity refers to the acceptance of gender roles. Uncertainty avoidance is a community's tolerance for unstructured, unclear, or unpredictable situations. And short-term versus long-term orientation refers to prioritization of immediate versus more distant needs and desires. There are also some aspects of culture that are specific to education. And the idea, for example, of social presence, or the degree to which a person feels real, especially in computer-mediated environments, is one such aspect. The other aspect is that of academic culture. So this refers to academic roles, values, assumptions, attitudes, and patterns of behavior within a learning environment or a knowledge production setting. Cultures vary in the way they regard education. In Western cultures, for example, education is seen as a route for success, independence, wealth, opportunity, and achievement. Eastern cultures also value these outcomes. However, in addition, Confucian and Buddhist philosophies view education as a way of becoming an acceptable human being. Hence, education includes formation, the development and improvement of the person. In Western cultures, the teacher's role is to guide student knowledge acquisition. The process does not necessarily require a strong relationship between student and mentor. In Eastern cultures, the bond between teacher and student are essential to a good education. In fact, students often strive to become like the teachers they value and admire. Finally, Western cultures prize individualism. When making decisions, Westerners tend to do so with a strong sense of individualism, freedom, and self-sufficiency. Eastern cultures are more interdependent, and collectivist. They're also more holistic. Much of the knowledge and most of the innovations produced in the context of artificial intelligence and education tend to come from Western industrialized educated, rich, and democratic countries. So these are the weird countries. This tends to codify biases because it ignores cultural and contextual factors. These omissions may decrease an intervention's effectiveness over a target group and may have an impact on user responses to educational systems that are designed to support culturally sensitive dimensions such as self-concept, motivation, or emotion. Permit me now to discuss a few examples that illustrate the impact that culture has on AI-based educational software design and use. At the micro level, we are concerned with specific student preferences that may have an impact on the way students respond to educational software, specifically the use of pedagogical agents. Pedagogical agents are animated characters that appear in educational software to provide help, feedback, or instructions. Children are sometimes sensitive to the appearance and gender of these characters. To determine whether these preferences were culturally distinct, there was a group, John and colleagues, who conducted a study in 2013 where they asked students from North America, Argentina, Pakistan, and Jamaica to draw characters or avatars under these conditions. So the students were aged 7 to 10 and they were given a simple interface like what you see on screen, and they were asked to draw a character and to provide a statement that the avatar might say if the player's answer was wrong. The researchers found that children tended to draw characters that were the same gender. Pakistani children drew more fantasy characters. Pakistani and Argentinian students drew more detailed characters and more head coverings than students from the US or Jamaica. US students drew the least detailed clothes. Argentinian students drew the most facial hair. Girls tended to draw more details on the skin. Girls tended to draw happy faces. US students tended to use more informal language. Argentinian students tended to be the most formal. In a similar study, Yarzabensky and colleagues analyzed the avatar hairstyle and name choices of students in the US and the Philippines. They found that students tended to customize their avatars in ways similar to their own regions. The Philippine students tended to choose avatar names from other cultures, possibly because of our colonial history. In a recent study from Yonsei University here in Korea, researchers found the participants from South Korea, Chinese, and North American students preferred 2D renderings of avatars, while Brazilian and Russian respondents preferred 3D appearances. When actually working with pedagogical agents, students from varying cultures tend to respond differently. So for example, this is Scooter, the tutor, an agent that implements an intelligent tutoring system, an agent that was part of an intelligent tutoring system for creating and interpreting scatter plots. Scooter was designed to show a happy face if the student was using the tutor well, and if the student was using the tutor badly, then Scooter gets very angry, like the red dog over there. And we found that in the US, Scooter reduced misuse of the system when the students who saw angry Scooter more often liked him less than those who saw him less frequently. In other words, the students who benefited most from Scooter were the ones who liked Scooter the least. In contrast, students from the Philippines reported liking Scooter. However, Scooter did not succeed in making them use the system better. The explanation for this is that students in the Philippines may have perceived Scooter as a caring, helpful, useful authority figure with expertise in the subject matter. Okay. At the meso level, we are concerned with the characteristics of the classroom, teacher, or school culture that may have an impact on educational software use. So in 2012, Ogan and colleagues brought Cognitive Tutor, an intelligent tutoring system for math, into classrooms in Brazil, Costa Rica, and Mexico. When the Cognitive Tutor is deployed in the US, it is used on an individual basis. In contrast, students from these Latin American countries tended to use the software collaboratively. They noted several modes of interaction, including teacher-led. So the teacher would be using the software in front of the students, and the entire class would advance through the software at the same time. The teacher would describe a single step, and then she would wait for the whole class to accomplish that step. There was also student-led group work, where students formed small groups, and then when one student completed one step, the next student would take over and do the next step. So they shared a single computer. So this need to collaborate in comparison with students from the United States could be explained by the novelty of the software, students' varying levels of math, and a lack of technological resources. There are ways in which educational software can be designed to fit cultural needs. There was a group from Sogang University, also Korea, who developed Franklin, an interactive service that enables students to write fairy tales in collaboration with an AI language generation model. This model was built on a Korean fairy tale dataset, and the dataset was cleaned of social biases, social discrimination, hatred, profanity, cruelty, gender bias, and so on. So therefore, Franklin prevents the generation of unethical or biased stories. In Singapore, there is a system called Apple Tree, which supports collaborative learning, and it provides students with a digital workspace where they can draw graphs that express their ideas. They can share these ideas with peers and receive feedback. One of Apple Tree's proponents, Dr. Wen Li Chen, said that Apple Tree makes education more equitable by creating low floor, high ceiling, wide walls, that is, learning environments that are accessible to learners of all ability levels and that offer progression from basic to advanced through a diverse range of paths. Saving face is also a consideration, and in Eastern cultures specifically. So it finds its way in the design of quarks. question, authoring, and reasoning knowledge system, which is a system that supports student question generation activities and peer feedback. This was developed in Taiwan. And so participants can create questions of all kinds using different media, including pictures, videos, and so on. And this enables the students to save face by making sure that all of the questions and the feedback are anonymous. This prevents labeling of students as being bright or lazy. It also provides flexible scaffolding supports, emphasizing goal orientation rather than test orientation. And let's see, in our own experience in the Philippines, we collaborated with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign on the implementation of a series of Minecraft worlds designed to teach STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. And from this experience, we used this particularly during the pandemic, we found that we needed to spend about 1 month just coaching the teachers on designs of modules that integrate this system into their classes. So despite all of this support, continuity was still challenging. Teachers noted that the schools only had 1 computer laboratory, they didn't have time to regularly access it, and they had difficulty aligning the software, the Minecraft software, with the curriculum. Okay, finally, what is happening at the level of nations? Here we enter the realm of technopolitics. So technopolitics is defined as the intersection where political actions are shaped by technological advancements and vice versa. This is very difficult. This is a very difficult situation because AI power is concentrated in a few rich states. Most countries, developing countries in particular, are at a disadvantage. The US and China have the opportunity to lead AI-based foreign assistance and shape AI standards through their ambassadorial brands, such as Apple, Google, DeepSeek, and others. They have an opportunity to shape beliefs, perceptions, and moral frameworks. What does that power do to the rest of us? Are our identities and our cultures at risk of being incorporated into a singular global sameness? It sometimes feels that way. So let me end by talking a little about examples of how we can move forward. So first is this notion called Jugad innovation. And Jugad innovation refers to improvisation, easy solutions, and keeping things simple. And one such innovation is Khan Academy. Khan Academy Philippines was started in 2023, and it's now extended from, it started with 34 schools, and it now extends to 1,500. The schools commit to using Khan Academy for 30 minutes per week, and that might not sound like very much, but by the way, they do try to localize content as well by using, for example, Filipino currency for math problems. If 30 minutes per week doesn't sound like very much, then please consider the context that the Philippines has some of the poorest test scores worldwide. And so we think that maybe using Khan will help. The second example I wish to share is the AI Ed Unplugged movement, and this is a movement that aims to develop innovations that consider the constraints of the developing world. So these include the consideration of infrastructure, resources, and pedagogical practices. UNESCO's recently approved the establishment of AI Ed Unplugged Chair and the UNITWIN network. The network's goals include the promotion of global cooperation, the development of educational resources, and the advancement of innovation. So in closing, let us remember that for AI to be an instrument of educational equity, We must build culture into the design, the development, and deployment of our AI-based educational interventions. We need to consider not just what we want students to learn, but also who our students and teachers are, what circumstances they face, and how we can best serve them. This takes intentionality, and this takes work. But by honoring our learners, our teachers, and their contexts, the technologies we build have a better chance of making real and lasting impact that will benefit all. So thank you. 감사합니다.
네. 마리아 로드리고 교수님의
Thank you so much,
강연이었습니다.
Professor Maria Rodrigo, for your wonderful presentation.
좋게 쓰이면 교육의 형평성을
AI could be beneficial in
동시에
improving
또 새로운
equity
격차를
in
낳을 수 있기
education,
때문에
but at the same
문화적인
time, it
맥락을
can create
굉장히
disparities.
고려해서
That is why we need to
설계를 해야 된다고
design the education with the cultural aspects reflected. Thank you so
자,
much
이어서
for
두
your
번째 주제
presentation.
강연을 청해 듣도록
Next, we'll move on to the second keynote speech. Please welcome Ms. Eugene Chen, CEO and co-founder of Classroom,
AI
who
세대가
will speak on the
길러야 할
topic
인간
Educating the
중심
AI
역량을
Generation,
주제로
Cultivating Human-Centered
준비해 주셨습니다.
Competencies.
최우진 대표님을
Please
무대로
give her a warm round of
모시겠습니다.
applause
여러분,
as she
박수로
takes
환영해
the
주시기
stage.
바랍니다.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eugene Choi. As introduced, I am the CEO and co-founder of Classroom. Over 8 years, I've worked closely with thousands of educators and students around the world as AI shapes how we teach, learn, and how we connect. Today, I'd like to share what it means to educate the AI generation and how we can cultivate human-centered competencies and truly define our future. AI is transforming education on every level, from national policies to classroom practices. Let's look at the Korean education system, for instance. It's evolving in 3 major areas. A changing student landscape, school-age students are lowering, global competencies is accelerated, and new kinds of demand is in the job market. And this rapidly changing area, institutions are re-examining their purposes. Are we simply delivering knowledge, or are we designing the growth of the students? We now see algorithm analyzing each learner's strength and challenges and defining patterns educators might not have found out before. Recommendation system is personalizing the way the students learn in every space, turning the dream of individualized learning to reality. At the same time, Korea's AI convergency initiates a hub school, are scaling fast, expanding from 664 to 1,500 by 2029. These programs aim not only to teach AI, but to help teachers to use it confidently, because real transformation happens when teachers themselves feel empowered by AI technologies. Then what does the true learning mean in the new age? Learning isn't passive. As you can see, it's a living process. Since we are in a school building, let's imagine that this is inside a classroom setting. When we encounter new information, what do? Learning begins with the struggle of facing something that we don't understand yet. Then we become frustrated because the answers don't come easily and persistence is tested. Through these sessions, that tension becomes the breakthrough that we experience inside school, when clarity finally takes shape. And ultimately, collision. When new understanding meets the real world, changes that we once believed and sparking the next cycle of learning. Artificial intelligence doesn't replace these cycles. It actually builds the condition to make deeper learning possible within these cycles. It provides immediacy, giving instant feedback that turns confusion into clarity, and it enables personalization, matching each student's learning level, so challenges stretch, but it doesn't overwhelm them. And it offers expertise, granting access to specialized knowledges anytime and anywhere. AI empowers learners to explore more freely, and it actually gives teachers the guidance to give more meaningful guidance to students. But even in this new environment, the essence of learning remains in human curiosity, reflection, and conditions. No matter how intelligent our system becomes, learning still depends on interaction. Only people can ask, respond, and actually think together. When students learn to ask questions, AI can actually generate richer dialogue and deeper exploration. When they discuss and debate, they build understanding that no algorithm can replace. As AI grow more capable, human connections grow more essential because interaction isn't just how we share knowledge, it's actually how we are meaning to get together. When Classroom began back in 2017 and 18, we noticed that how many students actually feel incapable inside class, hesitant to speak up, or they are not because they lack curiosity, because they are not knowing what to ask, or asking question itself is very difficult. And especially after the pandemic, we have seen a lot of students hesitate to ask questions or participate inside class in a real-time setting. And a lot of the students are actually learning how to reconnect with the society again. So we asked the questions to ourselves, what if technology helps make this communication closer instead of making it colder? That question became our mission, to bridge the communication gap and make learning more participatory and more humane. Our goal was never to replace educators or students, but it connects them and amplify curiosity and confidence. Our mission was actually very, very simple. Unleash the full potential of every learner and every educator around the world, because we believe when AI meets the interaction, it really brings the future of learning. AI amplifies knowledge, interaction gives its meaning. So together they unlock the potential that neither could receive alone. That's the balance we aim for. Technology that expands and reach for human connection, not to replace it. So first, we actually built a learning management system that is a new generation of management system. Instead of putting that management to the center, we actually provide communication and interaction to the center. As you can see from our mock-up picture, it really brings that communication together. We decided to add AI since 2018 to enhance the entire learning journey. For example, Classroom provides AI TA, teaching assistant, which helps professors analyze assignment, create rubrics, deliver precise and meaningful feedback more faster, easier, and with greater consistency. We also launched Classroom Connect very recently, which is an AI chatbot that handles everyday campus questions effortlessly while identifying when student might need help with a personal support. So for example, if students have questions of, am I able to graduate, or am I able to go and pursue this career and such. So AI helps with scale of empathy, but still makes people who make the real learning happen. So these are some of the highlights that we can bring up. At Hallym University, we saw how AI and human interaction together can transform learning. As you can see, we actually improve student-to-student interaction and student-to-professor interaction as well, because we are able to give them real-time feedback of understanding of the class itself, whether to re-level the understanding of the class or to actually increase the level of the class to help students learn better. So it gives them a clearer picture of what students truly understand and could adjust their teaching immediately. And with Classroom Connect, AI doesn't handle the routine question. It actually supports students with a personalized academic and career guidance. So as you can see, example that we came up with, Ulsan University, Daegu University, or Gwangju University, actually really helps enhance these. 98% of the questions is actually handled by AI, and also 34% of the immediate calls to the admin actually decrease, freeing staff to focus on deeper and more meaningful guidance. These results actually show what happens when AI and people work together and not replace them. AI amplifies capacity and humans bring empathy. Together, they create a smarter and more responsive learning environment, one built not on automation, but on connection. That transformation we're witnessing in university offers a glimpse of what is possible. Yet the true foundation of an AI-ready society must start on a younger level of K-12 education, developing the competency that will allow the future learners to think critically, collaboratively, and act ethically must start before they enter college. So today we're going to look at three major competencies of the younger generation, which is AI literacy as a foundation, collaborative communication as the core, and ethical and reflective thinking as a capstone. These are not a new subject. They are actually a new way of learning, thinking, and living. First, we're going to take a look at AI literacy. The gap between AI user isn't about how and who uses it. It's actually about who truly understands it. So AI literacy means knowing what AI can and cannot do, understanding its strength, its limitation, and ethics behind it. It's not about designing effective prompts, interpreting results, and verifying accuracy and biases. Students who understand AI don't just consume information, they actually question, analyze, and create with it. So, for example, using AI is a convenience, generating answer, summarizing text, or automating a task. But understanding AI is actually having that awareness of what AI can do, knowing how these answers are made, what data they're built on, where the limitation is. So anyone can use AI, but who understand it and who actually know how to ask questions and verify it and guide with it is very, very different. So we'll be the ones who truly shape the future. That's why AI literacy isn't just a technical skill, it's a mindset. The ability to think critically, design intentionally, and stay accountable is how we use technology. We're going to move on to collaborative communication, which I feel like is the overall key message throughout the session of yesterday and today. So complex problem actually requires teamwork, diversity, and sharing understanding. That's why collaborative communication is actually heart of the education today, and I think that's something that we should really take into account without the session today. It's about learning how we listen as deeply as we speak to turn conversation into co-creation. So students discover that innovation doesn't come from one voice, but from many working in human. Today, complex challenges demand fresh perspective as AI is shifting so much and shifting faster. The next generation must learn how to harness collaborative intelligence, combining diverse expertise to solve problems, and no single person can actually tackle this alone. For example, through problem-based learning, students apply knowledge to the real context. Debate and discussion, they sharpen logic, question, bias, and strengthen the critical thinking. And through collaborative tools, they take ownership of learning, the platform and the method that best fits their goal. So, for example, in Korea, Cheongwon Middle School actually embodied this very, very beautifully. Students would connect classroom learning with their local community, visiting institutions, market centers, and museums to explore real-world challenges. Their project, Our Neighbor through VR and chatbot, they turn local stories into the interactive perspective, blending technologies into empathy. So the collaborative communication they're doing not only with their peers, but with the community they're actually associated with and using technology and AI together, they were able to turn that actions into a real creation. Lastly, we're gonna look at what ethical and reflective thinking is. I think that where we observe technology and how we use it and bringing that outcome is great. But also as a generation is getting AI into their real world and then trying to use that AI into every single sector of their life, having that ethical and reflective thinking cannot be more important than ever. Because technology is actually not neutral. It depends on the value that we bring in. And I think that should be really taken seriously. Students today use AI daily, yet few stop to ask how algorithms influence their thinking. Ethical and reflective thinking teach them to look beneath the surface of the information they're actually receiving, to understand the data biases, fairness, privacy, and social impact. When students learn to question not just what they can do, but why they should do with it, they grow into a responsible creator in their digital world. And bringing that responsibility within the classroom setting is really important. I wanted to bring up with a framework that is widely used inside Korea, which is a cycle of reflective learning, a framework that guides learners to think very deeply and act intentionally and learn continuously with their peers. So let's begin with the setting of a topic. And that's where students would bring that curiosity of the topic they're interested in and they truly care about. As they explore and share perspective with AI and also their peers or their teachers or community, AI can become their partner, helping them gather information, visualize idea, and reflect on what they discover. Through this perspective, students not just observe knowledge, they actually build together and understand what they're actually going through. So giving them encountering different perspectives through AI with people and with the information they're gathering around the world and building their own thinking and bringing that cycle of growth and refinement until they actually reach and organize their thoughts. And I think that's where the educators and teachers come in to help them optimize their learning and thinking, to make sure that they're actually reflecting upon what they're actually using with their AI. And evaluating new ideas. As an example that I gave before previously with Cheongha Middle School, I think that evaluating new ideas and actually implementing them in the real society would help them how they can visualize that AI can do in their learning. So AI support with the journey actually reflects them into the growth system. So as I conclude the session, I don't think that it's about what can AI do. It's actually the question should begin and ask of how should we learn with AI and what AI actually taking AI into consideration into the learning. So making sure that AI is a technology that we are accepting, not neutrally, but having the perspective of how we can use AI into different setting of education for students and also for educators as well. AI can analyze, predict, and assist, but only human can imagine, empathize, and give learning to the meaning. By cultivating AI literacy, collaborative communication, and ethical thinking, we can prepare students not only into adapting changes, but to actually lead it. And I think that is the core message that I would like to give today. Because the future of learning isn't about technology replacing people. It's about people and technology learning together to build a wiser and more human world. Thank you.
네, 최유진 대표님의 강연이었습니다. AI와 인간의 교류를 더욱더 활성화.
That was Ms. Ch's insightful presentation. She emphasized the importance of designing education that nurtures human-centered thinking and reflection, encouraging us to view AI not merely as a tool, but as a true partner in learning. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And now we'll move on to the last presentation of
카이스트 전산학부의 김주호 교수님께서 준비해 주셨는데요. 인간, AI 협업시대, 학습의 재설계를 주제로 강연해 주시겠습니다. 여러분, 큰 박수로 활용해 주시기 바랍니다.
Please give Mr. Kim a big round of applause, everyone.
네, 안녕하세요. 저는 카이스트 전산학부
Hello everyone, I am Juho Kim from K-Edu Computing Science. I will speak in Korean for better communication. So, previous speakers talked about the culture, capacity, cognition, and others. But today, my talk will talk about how humans need to collaborate with AI to redesign learning. So I am a computer scientist. That means I'm not an educator, but I want to develop technologies that help others build better capacities to learn. So I am actually developing tools and systems to do so, and I have brought my presentation to share my takeaways. So this is a picture that was imagined back in 1900. This is the education or the classroom that would look like in the 2000. And you can see that on the right side of the picture, the teacher is putting in textbooks, and what's put in this device are directly connected to each student's brains. I think this is quite similar to how AI is functioning. We train a lot of data with AI, and the AI would process all of these data and then provide more tailored answers to each individual. So I think this picture captures personalized learning that we are frequently talking about. But we can see that students here are quite passive in learning.
하는 건
Do we really
아니니까.
have
그런
to learn
관점에서
possibly
AI랑
in
우리가
the
어떤 식으로 학습을 해야
era
할까
of
생각을
AI?
해보겠습니다.
So
이
this
글은 제가
makes us to
2003년에
have a lot of
기고를 했던
questions,
글인데
and
그때
this
이제 AI가 막 화두가
paper
되던
was written by
시기였습니다.
myself in
그래서 10년 후의
2013.
교육을
That was
상상했을
when
때
2023,
이야기를 좀할수 있을까?
and
라는
I
이제 기고 의뢰를 받고 쓴
imagined
글입니다.
10
여기서
years
제가 생각했던
later
거는
what
저희
would
아들이
education or the
명품 AI
world
튜터를
will look
사달라고
like.
저한테 쪼르는 거죠. 다양한
And
브랜드의 AI
it
튜터가 있는데 요거
talks
들으면
about
되게
how
집중이
my
잘 되고
son
설명도
would
잘되고 점수도 오를 것 같다.
asked me to buy a
신나게
very
하는
premium
가상의 그런 시나리오를
AI
생각을
tutor,
해봤고요.
and this
두
is
번째는
an
글쓰기
argument between my
대회에서 사람이
son
혼자
and
쓴 글이
myself.
수상을 하는 이변을
And
발생했다.
news one says that a student won a writing contest without using AI because we could live in an era where writing without AI is nearly impossible.
근데 이런 미래가 생각보다
But
빠르게 오고 있는
this
것
type of
같습니다.
future
불과
is
2년
coming
전인데
very
지금
fast. I wrote this piece 2 years ago, but I think we are confronting this reality faster than expected. So we are seeing more AI integration across many parts of our daily life. So we have both opportunities and concerns in education with the integration of AI, because from a learner's perspective, we can get any type of learning anywhere we want. But at the same time, a learner could feel a sense of inferiority or deprivation. Can I really do something important in society?
굉장히 다양한 도움을 받을 수 있고
And a teacher's perspective too. Teachers can get support in preparing lessons, designing test questions, and developing curricula. But if we do not change the way we teach, such as just one-way transmission of knowledge, it's not going to work anymore. So the teachers would have to think about fundamental questions about how to teach and what to teach in the age of AI. I think from the learning perspective, we need to make AI more flexible in applying education. When we think about AI application in the area of education, we often think of an agent or a tutor. But a tutor could be similar to a device that just transmits knowledge to a student's brain. But we can leverage LLM to provide many different types of learning to students, such as role plays. And I believe AI can be applied to various settings in education. So there was a similar case in K-Edu University, and there was an English writing class, and this class hit the hardest with the introduction of ChatGPT, because ChatGPT would draft essays that would usually take an entire semester for students to draft. And at K-Edu, we actually developed a very simple tool. We integrated OpenAI's ChatGPT into this platform, but we defined a tutor differently. So instead of drafting an essay for students, but rather the agent would provide instructions or guides rather than drafting an essay for students. So we offered the service to students. We said, please use the service instead of ChatGPT, it's free. So we piloted this program for 1 semester. There were 3 different types of classes. We do not really need to differentiate them between. But overall, we were able to see positive improvements in their essay. And especially for those with low academic performance, rated the service more favorably. What we can learn from here is that people with or students with lower final scores tend to be less active in classrooms, and they are more shy in asking questions, but they utilized this AI service more proactively. And this result was quite pleasant to me. We received higher ratings than ChatGPT in terms of reliability, tone and style appropriateness, and answer quality. So we were very glad to see that our service was
rated higher
결국에는
when
AI의 성능
the model
자체가
itself
아니라
was
이게 어떻게 학습
ChatGPT.
경험에 설계가
So
되고
this
뭐가
proves
들어가는가,
that
학생들이 이걸 어떻게
the
사용하는가에
AI
따라서
design itself
그런
is
차이가
more
생길 수
important
있다라는
than
거죠.
the performance of the
저희가
AI
그러면서 이 AI의
programs.
퍼소나를 잘 설정했다라고
And we
생각해요.
also realized that we had this very well-designed persona, which offers an experience similar to receiving corrections from an English teacher. It's more like a conversation with a summary of the lesson content, so that AI would provide more expert responses.
두 번째로 소개드릴 연구는
Second
역시
research that I
AI를
can present
튜터가 아니라
is
다양한 방식으로 활용한다는 측면에서
applying
이번에는
AI in a different manner
생각을
than a tutor. So
우리가
we
보통
flipped our
교육학에서도
thinking.
많이 나오는 연구 중에 하나가
I think one of
가장
the
잘
common
학습할 수 있는
pedagogical
방법 중에 하나가
research
남을
is
가르치는 거죠.
teaching others to learn.
수업 시간에
So
선생님만큼
you
잘 많이
become a
배우는 사람이
teacher
없다라는
to
이야기를
become
하는데,
better at
그래서
some subject.
AI를 가르치면 어떨까?
So why don't we teach AI? So we flipped our thinking
그 경험을
and
TeachYou라는 챗봇을 통해 만들었어요.
create this
그래서 이
Teach
챗봇은
You
굉장히
chatbot
천연덕스럽게
to help
모르는
students
척
to
학생
become
연기를
a
하는 챗봇입니다.
teacher.
그래서
So
예를 들면
this
이제
chatbot
프로그래밍
would
수업에서
act
이진
like
탐색이라는
a
개념에 대해
student. So for example, when you are asking this ChatGPT how to explain what's binary search, then the student would provide a detailed explanations based on what they have learned at classrooms. So based on what they learned from human teachers, they actually carry out a series of tasks. So based on the information and knowledge, they're able to get the tasks right just to the extent that they learned. So if the humans teach wrong, or if the humans teach less, then the students would get less scores. And the students using this AI chatbot would continuously ask why and what. But the relationship here, the setting here is that AI learns from students. After the entire process or exercises, they can get involved with in-depth discussion. For example, I heard this applies to only a specific setting. What happens then? Then the student would receive such questions and continue an in-depth debate with an AI. So these case examples show that AI can be more than just a tutor. It can play many other roles in education. Second topic that I want to touch upon is that AI can build self-directed growth and self-efficacy for many students. I briefly talked about a sense of inferiority for students. I'll show a very short clip. This 8-year child is programming using AI within just 45 minutes. This 8-year-old kid created this chatbot that would talk with Harry Potter. It's not that she is a genius in programming, but rather she was very good at having a conversation with an AI chatbot. Let's watch this video.
A text box. Now we have this.
추가해달라고 하고요.
The girl would say, please add a text box, and then it would come up.
So now it's gonna have like a little lightning bolt. I'm gonna apply it.
I want to
If it
put
does
a
work,
thunderstorm
it's
or
gonna be
thunderbolt.
so cool. So now I'm gonna say hello. That looks so cool. Oh wait, I need to change to nothing for the background.
Lightning,
Can
lightning symbol
you have the dots bigger, and can they move?
배경을 이제 바꾸고 싶어서
Okay,
She
now
wants
this
to
is good.
change the
So what I'm gonna
background
do is
so
accept it.
large
Any
dots.
errors? No. Refresh. There! Now they move. So hi, I'm Faye. And then it will say
네. 그래서 이제 이 앱을 45분 만에
So within just 45 minutes, she was able to code,
찍어서 소셜 미디어에 올린
and
내용인데요.
her dad actually captured this moment and uploaded on YouTube. I think this video has a lot of implications. One is that this kid can have a conversation when learning about programming, so it's quite fresh learning experience. And second,
성공 경험을 하는 거죠.
she had succeeded in actually programming. She had this AI agent or AI assistant in directing orders and checking whether or not the AI did right. But at the same time, I felt shocked and confused because I am a professor giving assignments and teaching at university. But when teaching program, we usually start with grammar. You need to space out, you need to put colon here and there. But I thought to myself, is it right to teach programming in this way? Because she doesn't look at coding at all. So can we say that she really knows coding here? She only talks to AI and then sees the results. So it doesn't really mean that she knows coding. So is it really appropriate to learn coding and programming this way? That's what I thought to myself after watching this video.
학습하고 일하는 거에 너무 익숙해
But I think
상황이 된 것 같습니다.
young people, even kids nowadays, are very familiar with AI technologies. We are going to see the rise of AI native generations, and these generations will enter the society very soon.
빠르게 도입이 된 분야 중에 하나인데
So programming is one of the sectors where AI has been integrated,
AI 없이 코딩을 해본 적이 없는
and graduates of university will soon be not even able to code without AI. So working together with AI will become much more natural. But the established generations like me, myself, would have hard time doing so. So in that perspective, many people would say, oh, we don't need to learn programming anymore because AI would do everything. But in order to give appropriate and right prompts to AI, you need to be able to have the right knowledge and have right communication skills. So basic skills will become all the more important going forward. That is why in the era of AI, we need to divide roles and responsibilities between AI and humans. When we do something, we start with input like planning, design, and orders. And in between, we have operations or execution of tasks. And then after tasks, we verify and give feedback and communicate about the output. But in many areas, we see a pattern where the middle part where operation is taken up by AI in a very fast manner. That means humans are only focused on one input and output. That means we are evolving in some manner. So the tedious jobs would be taken by AI, and input and output can be tackled by humans. And from the required capacities, humans could focus on just prompting and communicating rather than executing.
그리고 이제 이런 AI랑 소통을 하고 일을 할 때
So when you work with AI,
우리한테는 무슨 일이 일어나는가에 대한
what would happen to us? We need to understand this. So at our lab, we did this research.
프로그래밍이 워낙 AI를 통해 잘 되기 때문에
Programming is quite done well with the AI. So we say we do coding with just mouse. I don't know how this would be translated into English, but literally coding would be programmed by just mouse or words. For example, at our K-Edu website, if I just literally say out loud, oh, please enlarge the logo K-Edu, the AI would automatically execute the task.
이 부분을 강조해줘라고 하면 강조라는 건 사실 한 가지 답이 있는 게 아니라 다양한 방식으로 발성을
bolden this font, then AI would do so.
그래서 관련된 여러 가지를 추천을 해주고
The AI would actually give a lot of recommendations as to how to bolden this text.
원하는 걸 고치는 그런 효율적인 작업에도 도움이 되지만
So AI is quite useful in efficient optimization customization of the
저희가 실험을
website.
해봤어요.
So we did this
일반적인 그런 개발자
research.
도구에 비해서 이런
Compared
툴을
to
썼을 때
normal or
학습자들이
ordinary
더 잘
developer
배우는가, 더
tools,
잘 일을 수행하는가
do
봤는데
learners
문제
execute better with
해결도
AI?
더 많이 했습니다.
The results were
그
quite
초보자
positive.
분들을 저희가 실험을
Even
했을 때
beginners were able to complete problem-solving issues with our program. It was 80% of the users successfully completed the task, whereas it was only 35% for just developer tools by Chrome. And the task time reduced by 35%, so we were able to see intended positive outcomes. So that was nice, but one of my research team members came to me and showed this graph. So our system is called the Stylet, as you can see on the left. The y-axis, no matter what they are, it should go upward. However, we're seeing fluctuations over time instead of a very nice curve upwardly. So we see faster tasks, but we see a downward in self-efficacy. I know we have a lot of experts in education. We all know what self-efficacy is, but self-efficacy is very, very important in education and learning. So we were quite surprised about this outcome. So we had an interview with the participants. So when the participant used the developer tool, it was quite difficult, but the participant said that they felt proud in completing the task by themselves. However, on the left side, we see a decrease in self-efficacy because the participant felt less proud in what they have done, and they felt frustrated that they had to communicate with the AI in what they want. Another research that I found meaningful was that they did a research with 1,000 high school students in Turkey. So we divided this group into two. In one group, we gave GPT to use during test, and the other half were given any ChatGPT in testing. And who do you think scored better in testing? Yes, as expected, those who use ChatGPT scored better in testing. If that was the result of the research, we can tell and demonstrate that, okay, ChatGPT is useful in testing and whatnot, but that's where researchers did not end. They excluded AI here, and they only allowed their own knowledge to test. And what do you think the result was? Yes. The one that did not use ChatGPT from the very first place scored much better. Because the students were using AI as just answer finders. What we want in education is for students to ask questions and explore further using AI, but students in reality use ChatGPT to just find answers. They don't go beyond them. I think in order to prevent them, we need to design our programs and AI education services better. So rather than criticizing students for using AI in finding answers, we need to redesign education so that students approach education in the right manner. So Dr. Oh, who is a very famous psychiatrist expert, she said that people experience increases in self-confidence and self-efficacy when they find something that they did not know. But when we use AI, we feel less confident because the AI would give you immediate answers. So the AI should be used to find something that students were not able to know before. So what kind of educational experiences can we offer to students? That is something that we need to take into consideration on the ground and in the research area as well. So we are talking about capacity as one of our keywords. So how do humans get familiar with one specific capacity? Mr. Bin
is an expert in apprenticeship, so they do one-on-one apprenticeship between a novice and a master. And he found that there are three factors in building skills among humans. One is challenge. That means tasks that slightly challenge one's current limits. Second is complexity. That means real-world tasks that are multi-layered and context-rich. And third, connection. That means trust-based mentorship between experts and novices. But what's more important is that when AI and robots take over tasks, we see a breakdown among these factors. For example, if you see a surgeon, as you can see on the left, we see this seen a lot on TV series. So the resident would teach interns, and interns get yelled at for doing something wrong or making mistakes. So they go through years of painful period to become a very good surgeon. So this is how surgeons are trained. But with the adoption of robotic surgery, as you can see on the right side, the left box on the right side is the robotic arms. So robotic arms are the ones who operate a surgery, and doctors on the right side would operate the robotic arms using a device. This is how the robotic surgery will look like. Of course, robotic arms are quite precise, so we will see better results, and hospitals can promote their hospitals for good surgeries, but residents or surgeons themselves would lose their place in a surgery room, operating room. So this is something that was unexpected. We expected that robotic surgery would reduce burdens for surgeons, improving efficiency, but residents' skills and capacities cannot be expanded. And that's something that we tend to miss out. That is why the 3C factors break down and get disrupted. Because residents lose the chance to see fresh cases and something they can learn from operating rooms, because they would no longer engage in complex surgeries with the adoption of robotic surgeries. So they would not be given any challenge throughout their career. And second, there will be no complexity. And they would lose the opportunity to read the entire context. And third, they would have less connection between the doctors and surgeons. That is why a lot of residents are learning how to operate using YouTube. And surgeons who learned from YouTube are fearful about getting surgeries for themselves, because he knows that there is no good surgeon nowadays. So in the era of AI, we need to think about these limitations. And we should also move away from one-off events, but rather see sustainability over time. So the kids would learn with AI across the period of 10 years and 20 years. We would need to see the involvement between human and AI interaction. Over time, the dependency would go up, rather the skills would drop down. And that's something that we want to avoid going forward. The scaffolding in education is what we want to achieve going forward. In the beginning, we would receive a lot of support from AI because we do not know a lot. But over time, dependency would decrease and human skills would ultimately be elevated. But that's something we really don't see nowadays. And we also need to tailor AI solutions to each individual
so that AI can be also advanced with the development of human skills. So we need to see more synergistic effects between humans and AI over the course of time. So I think these elements need to be considered when we design the future of education, because all the learning and teaching methods would change over time. I think this would be quite cliche to say, but some might worry that humans would lose their jobs because AI would replace them, but I think the bigger concern is people need to be able to use AI more skillfully and artfully. But we do not see a lot of people doing that, and that would threaten the competitiveness of our society and humanity. And that is the end of my talk, and thank you so much for your attention. Thank you, Professor Kim, for your wonderful
오늘 이렇게 첫
presentation.
번째 세션을 마무리하면서
So this wraps up the first session.
합니다. 사진 촬영
We're going to commemorate this important occasion with all distinguished guests and speakers and people from the 경상북도 Education Office. Please come up to the stage.
네, 연구원장님도 함께 하시고요. 오늘 또 뒤에 토론을 맡아주시는 우리 좌장으로 맡아주시는 이찬 교수님도
And I would like to also
함께
ask
하겠습니다.
Mr. Ichan, the moderator, to come up to the stage for a photo session.
네, 기념사진 촬영을 진행하는 동안
So while
함께해
taking
주신
a
분들께서는
group photo,
휴식을
please
취하셔도
take
좋습니다.
a
현재
break.
시각이 3시
Now it's
52분입니다.
3:52.
약
We
4시
are going
5분까지
to take
쉬고요. 여러분들
a break
함께
until
하도록 하겠습니다.
4:05.
또 화장실은 입구에서 왼쪽으로 화살표 방향을
The
따라서
bathroom is located on the right side to the exit.
4시
I will
5분에
see you
다시금
back at
찾아뵙도록
4:05.
하겠습니다. 네, 두 번째 세션까지 참여하시는 분들께서는 저희가 끝나고 연사분들이 쓰신 저서를 선물로 준비가 되어 있습니다. 그러니까 첫 번째 세션에 이어서 두 번째 세션까지도 함께 해 주시기 바랍니다. 네, 오늘 정말 뜻깊은 행사이기 때문에 멋진 사진을 남겨야 합니다. 작가님 중앙 잘 맞춰졌나요? 네. 혹시 왼쪽에 계신 두 분께서 우측으로 두 분만 이렇게 자리를 옮겨주시면 더욱더 멋진 사진이 될 수 있을 것 같습니다. 네, 두 분 정도만 우측으로 가주시기 바랍니다. 네, 처음에는 조금 점잖게 한번 사진을 찍어보도록 하겠습니다. 따뜻한 미소와 함께 사진을 한번 찍어보도록 하겠습니다. 네, 하트 먼저 해볼까요? 네, 하트. 코리안 스타일 하트입니다. 하나, 둘, 셋. 네. 되셨을까요? 저희 화이팅도 한번 해볼까요? 네. 우리 연사님을 기준으로 이쪽에 계신 분들은 오른손을 들어주시고요. 또 좌측에 계시는 분들께서는 왼손을 들어주시면 멋있을 것 같습니다. 네, 함께 하신 분들께서는 저희 박수 부탁드립니다. 하나, 둘, 셋. 네, 너무나도 감사드립니다. 천천히 자리로 오시도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다. 이제 곧 두 번째 세션을 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 참석자 여러분들께서는 속히 행사장 내로 입장하여 주시고 자리에 착석해 주시기 바랍니다.
The
두
panel
번째
discussion
세션까지 함께해
was
주시는 참석자 여러분들께서는 행사 마무리에
come
우리
inside the venue and take a
저서를
seat.
소중한 마음을 담아서 선물로 드리고 있습니다.
And
끝까지
for the
관심
panel
많이
discussion
부탁드리고요. 참석해
participants,
주시기
we
바랍니다.
are giving out the books written by the panelists, so please stay tuned with us.
네, 잠시 후 두 번째 세션을 시작하도록
We'll soon begin the second
하겠습니다.
session.
토론을 시작할 텐데요.
We'll begin the panel discussion.
자리에 착석해 주시기 바랍니다.
Please be seated, everyone.
잠시 후 4시 15분부터
At 4:15, we will begin the panel
또
discussion.
끝까지 참석해 주시는 분들께는 우리 연사분들이
Thank you
쓰신
for
저서를 선물로
staying with
드리고
us, and
있습니다.
then if you stay
끝까지
until the end,
드립니다.
you'll have a chance to win the books authored by our panelists.
지금 4시 15분까지 3분 정도의
We have
시간이
3 minutes until
남아있는데요. 여러분들
4:15.
기다리시는 동안 저희 만족도 조사에
While
참여해
you're
주시면
waiting,
좋을 것 같습니다.
please participate in our satisfaction survey. If you turn to the very last page of the booklet, there's a QR code. Please scan the QR code and you can participate in the satisfaction survey.
의견이 2026년 경부 국제
Your feedback
교육
will greatly help us prepare for the 2026 International Education Forum next year, so please participate. Thank you.
그럼 패널 토론 세션을 시작하도록
Alright, then let's dive into the panel
앞서
discussion.
발표되었던 주제를 가지고 패널 토론을
Building on the topics
진행할
presented
텐데요.
earlier,
AI를 활용한
the discussion will center on the theme Enhancing Human Capabilities through AI. The session will be moderated by Professor Lee Chan from the Department of Industrial and Organizational Development and Convergence Studies at Seoul National University. Let's welcome Mr. Lee with a big round of applause. Let me also introduce our distinguished distinguished panelists, Ms. Isabel Howe, Executive Director of Stanford Accelerator for Learning, Professor Maria Rodrigo, Department of Information Systems and Computer Science at Ateneo de Manila University from the Philippines, Ms. Eugene Che, CEO and co-founder of Classroom, and Professor Joo Kim, School of Computing, KAIST. Now I will hand over the mic to Professor Lee. Professor Lee, please.
네, 여러분 안녕하십니까?
Good
오늘
afternoon,
세션의 자장을
everyone.
맡은 서울대학교 이찬
I'm
교수입니다.
Professor Lee Chan from Seoul National University. I'll be moderating this panel discussion. It's a great pleasure to be here in Gyeongju, a city with 1,000 years of educational heritage.
생각하고 있습니다. 신라의 국학 전통이 이어진
Here
경주에서
we have the spirit of
저희가
Kukkak,
다시
the
한번
ancient academic
배움의
institution
미래에
of the
대해서
Silla Kingdom.
이야기를 하게 되었는데요. 특히
We
이번
gather here
포럼은
once again to discuss the future of learning.
APEC
This forum is held in conjunction with the 32nd APEC Summit. APEC, as you know, brings together 21 economies from across the APEC region. It has now become an essential platform not only for economic cooperation but also for shaping the future of education, technology, and human development.
AI가 교실 안으로 깊이
As AI
들어오는
description and explanation of our individual panelists, first, we have Ms. Isabel Howe, the Executive Director of Stanford Accelerator for Learning. She previously served as a lecturer at Harvard Graduate School of Education and as Managing Director of Education at Omidyar Network.
주재하시는 것처럼 오늘 기조강연에서는
In her keynote earlier today, she reminded us that the essence of learning in the age of AI lies not in technology but in human connection.
두 번째 패널로 오신 마리아 로드리고
Second, we have Professor Maria Rodrigo.
아테네오 대학교의 교수님으로 재직하고 계시고요.
She's a professor at Ateneo de Manila University from the Philippines.
문화 반응형 AI를
She's a globally recognized scholar exploring the intersection of AI and education through cultural
문화적
perspectives.
다양성이 배제된 기술 설계는 오히려 우리에게
She
불평등을
emphasized
초래할
that
수 있음을 오늘 강조해 주셨습니다.
AI can perpetuate cultural bias and how we can overcome it.
아시아 최고의
Third, we have Ms. Eugene Che, CEO and co-founder of Classroom.
AI 기반 학습 플랫폼을 통해서 대학과 기업의 교육 문화를
She's transforming the culture of learning in universities and organizations through her AI-based platform, Classroom. In her presentation, she explored essential skills for our students in the age of AI. Lastly, we have Professor Kim Joo-ho. He earned his PhD from MIT, and he's leading the research in AI and human collaboration. In his presentation, he emphasized that AI is no longer a tool but a partner in learning.
유치원 또래의 아이부터 성인에 이르기까지 어떻게
From a
컴퓨터와
preschool
AI와
kid
상호작용을
to
하면서 성장하고
an
있는지를
adult.
소개를 주셨습니다.
He has introduced how human beings are growing together with AI.
질문을 드리고요. 그리고
We'll ask in each panelist one question, and after we go through everyone, we'll ask common questions.
혹시라도 질문이나
And
코멘트가
if time allows, we will open the floor for Q&A.
갖도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 first question은 우리 이사벨 하우
And the first question goes to Ms. Howe.
AI 시대의 관계 지능이
You emphasize relational intelligence, RQ, as the key to education in the AI era.
누구나 공감은 하는데 이걸 어떻게 우리가
Then how can
커리큘럼에
schools and
반영해낼
teacher
수
training
있을까?
programs
대한
practically
질문을
cultivate this
드리도록
competency in their
Isabel,
curriculum?
you emphasize the relational intelligence as the key to education in the AI era. So how can schools and teachers train programs practically cultivate this particular competence in their curricula? Could you answer to the question?
Yeah, thank you. So schools and teachers can develop relational intelligence by being intentional about the importance of human connections. This is my belief that every single teacher that I've ever met comes to become a teacher because they love relationships. They want to build relationships with their students. Relationships is something that is very human, but it's very intuitive. But our education systems have not been intentional in centering relationships. Let me actually be more specific. Education has been optimized for a long time on access, universal access in many of our countries, which is why we have large classes of maybe 30 or 40 students for a teacher. That's optimizing for access, not optimizing for relationships. So how can we rethink together collectively about the importance of human connections in this age of AI? This simply means having more time for teachers to spend time with students. And good news is that AI is actually helping a lot of teachers globally at the moment with efficiency tasks. So the hope is that maybe teachers will have more time to connect with their students. It's also very simple things such as greeting students at the door and making sure that every student is feeling being seen and valued. It also could be implementing new pedagogies, such as groups, and we heard from some of the speakers here already about ideas for how AI can better some pedagogy, such as project-based learning, where students work a lot more collaboratively in small teams through real impact projects. So those are just examples, but the intentionality between how do we recenter everything in education about relationships. It seems very obvious, but this is not how we have optimized our education systems. Thank you.
Thank you. 저희가 AI 시대에 들어서서 기술에 치중한
In
나머지
the age of AI, we are focused so much on technology that we often overlook relationships, as emphasized by Ms. Howe.
아시는 것처럼 대학이 최근에 당황하고 있는 이유는
As you know, a lot of colleges and universities are perplexed these days because right now, those who spend their time mostly at home during COVID are now entering colleges, which means that a lot of these students are lacking social skills
코로나 팬데믹 시절에
and workplaces as well.
학창 시절을 보낸 그룹들이 들어오게
A lot of college students who spend most of their time at home during their college years are now entering the workforce, which means that they, again, lack social skills and relationship skills.
팬데믹의 특수성을 우리가 극복한 지금의 AI
Now, with pandemic behind us,
대한 육성과 활용의 기회를 놓친다면
if we lose another opportunity to grow and develop relationship skills among our students and workforce, that could be a disaster for us. So in our school curriculum, we have to make sure that we put relationship at the center, like Ms. Howe emphasized. Thank you for the answer. And the next question goes, Professor Rodrigo.
를 주시면서 AI가 우리한테 문화적 편향을
So when AI fails to consider cultural context, it can reinforce inequality according to your presentation. Then what do you consider the first design principle should be to ensure cultural equity in educational AI?
Maria, what do you see the first design principle to ensure cultural diversity and equity when we develop AI for education?
Thank you for the question. I think part of it depends first on who the actor is at the level of the student, if it's the teacher or the pedagogical expert. Then the challenge is to understand first the context of the learner and what it is that the learner who the learner is, what their interests are, how they best learn. So for example, many of the, I was mentioning much of the software that's developed in the US, for example, tends to assume 1:1, one computer to one child. That's not true in many developing countries. Usually there are fewer computers and there are many students, so students have to work in groups. If that is the case, the interaction between software and learner is very different from 1:1. So how do you now create software that is designed for groups rather than for individuals? Also, there are considerations like language, which I guess is the most basic, but there are also cultural references. For example, if the illustration is about, let's say, baseball. Baseball is very popular here in Korea. Baseball is popular in the US and other countries, but it's not as popular, say, in the Philippines. So a baseball example is not really going to resonate with the learners. I think it's contextualizing, but in order to contextualize, we need a deep understanding of the learner and the learning situation.
Thank you. 마치 지금 한국에서 코리안 시리즈가 진행 중인
We have the baseball Korean series in operation now, so you gave the perfect example of baseball. I know that each country has specific preferences in sports, so we need to maintain this perspective of diversity. And this forum is held in line with the APAC, where 21 countries participate to promote cooperation. When comparing indicators, we often adopt the OECD indicators. Of course, in Korea achieved very fast achievements and performance in a very short period of time, but at the same time, there are some side effects to this rapid growth. We see a lot of areas of improvement, and one of them is diversity and inclusivity. According to the OECD indicators, Korea ranks lower in diversity and inclusion and equity compared to other indicators. We still lag behind. So this type of event like APAC Korea promotes various interactions and exchanges. I think it offers with an opportunity to improve inclusivity and diversity, and I hope that we can activate this area going forward in the era of AI. Moving on to the third question, I will now move on to Ms. Che. So in your presentation, you said that AI transforms the role of educators. Then what kind of new leadership and professionalism should they develop to stay relevant and effective?
어떤 새로운 형태의 리더십과 전문성을 갖춰야 될까요?
굉장히 어려운 질문인 것 같아요.
It's a very difficult question, but good question.
끝나고 이제 이자벨 교수님이랑 마리아 교수님이랑 끝나고 좀 랩업을 이제 같이 했어요.
After the session, I actually had some wrap-up session with Ms. Howe and Professor Rodrigo. We talked about some commonalities of our presentations. What we talked about was a lot is changing in pre-primary and also college education, but the very nature of education, which is human interaction, stays the same.
수업에서 학교에서 배우셨을 때 가장
So Ms. Howe asked earlier in her presentation what was the deep moment of deepest learning,
선생님, 학생 이렇게
and the audience said there was a teacher, a student. But if we ask students of the COVID time, they say there was always Zoom in their learning moments. And if you ask students these days, there's always ChatGPT in their answers, which means that AI and technology is definitely transforming the way the learning happens in students. That's why teachers have to ask questions regarding how can we emphasize relationships in education. Since we are aiding the classroom with AI and technology, when classroom first started, the change that we witnessed was that with the rise of social media, a lot of students developed the fear of
talking over the phone, talking verbally to people because they're so used to texting. In the classroom, the traditional classroom, they have to raise a hand and ask verbally, which is fearful to them because they depend most of their communication on text. So when I was a student at KAIST, I developed a chat-based platform for those students. And actually, Professor Kim was there during my project. So these behavioral changes in students when they are aided by technology and AI like this, it can actually help students. So it helps students to interact more and ask questions more. But with the rise of AI, we are witnessing even more change compared to the rise of social media. So from a teacher's perspective, they have to be so much more than someone who understands the technology. They have to assume the role of creating a bridge between AI and students.
그래서 이거를 이제 조금 이제 워딩화를 시키면 이제 pedagogical leadership이라고 해서 이제
I want to call this pedagogical leadership.
이런 두 축을 연결해 가면서
So building the bridge between AI and people is very important, and that's the new role that we expect of educators.
정말로 상상의
And as we mentioned a lot of times, with the rise of AI, we have personalized learning.
맞춤식 교육이라든지 어떠한 부분들을
So individual students are able to get personalized learning.
실제 학생들이 왜 배워야 되는지 이
We can identify personal individual gaps, but why they have to learn.
사람의 영역으로 남아 있을 수밖에
That purpose has to remain in the human area.
받아야 되는지 AI를 통해서 이 결과치가 나왔을 때 어떻게
Why
활용돼야 되는지
they have to learn and how the results that they get from AI should be utilized. Those remain the role of human educators.
교수자들이 공감을 해주고
So
코칭을 해주고
empathy and coaching and giving motivation and explaining the purpose of education, those fall under pedagogical leadership.
앞서서 학생들에게 필요하다고 역량으로 말씀드렸던 뭐 AI 리터러시라든지
In order to do so, AI literacy and ethical thinking and in collaborative learning, the concepts that I emphasize in my presentation, those are expected of our students. So educators should not simply follow the tool, they should have ownership over the tool, AI. There are many AI platforms, and AI is developing so fast, as you know.
교수자분들이 어떤 AI를 내가 활용해야 되고
So educators should know what AI to use and what pedagogy to use. There are a lot of questions regarding that and also confusion as well. So as a company who provides AI software, it's important for us to help educators be selective.
그러다 보니까 이제 학생들을 평가할 때 루브릭을 개발하실 때에도 이제 AI랑
teachers come up with grading rubrics.
They
shouldn't have to come up with their own grading rubrics from scratch with AI. Classroom provides a framework and a template, and then they can simply use the template and build from there. So we don't leave our educators to use raw AI. We actually provide refined AI services so that educators can have more autonomy and freedom to use AI, and they can use their remaining resources to pay more attention to students. Thank you so much, Ms. Chair, for the answer.
교과문 교과 도메인 전문성을 갖고 가르치는데
So mostly teachers have their
도메인
own
전문성을
area of
기반으로 해서 가르치는
expertise.
방법적인 측면에서 딜리버리 측면에서 이제 AI와의
But when it comes to the delivery of knowledge,
효율성과 효과성을
it requires collaboration of AI for better delivery and better effectiveness.
말씀 주신 것처럼
But as Ms. Chair just mentioned,
대한 고민은 많이 해결됐는데 이
AI can handle a lot of the knowledge part, but at the same time, it means that we have to focus more on giving purpose and giving motivation.
대량 교육 시스템에서
So
학교를
mass
다닐 때는
delivery of knowledge
질문을 하는 것 자체가
used to
약간
be
불문율이었어요. 왜냐하면 진도
the
나가는 데
norm.
방해가
And
됐기
in
때문에.
such environment, asking questions was a taboo almost. However, these days,
수시로 명확하게 전달하고
asking questions and asking why is very important, and it's important for educators to encourage
가르치는
students to
교수자의 선생님의
ask questions.
아래 여러 가지 포트폴리오가 있는데 그 밸런스가 리밸런싱 되는 그런 과정이라고 볼 수
I think the
있을 것
roles and
같습니다.
responsibilities of our
이런
educators
내용들이
are
이제
going
뭐
through
오늘 포럼
change
이
with
세션
AI.
하나로 해결되진 않겠지만
And
궁금하신
we're not going to
분들은
see
그 세계를 직접
tangible
체험하시고
results
싶은
or
분들은
the
클래스홈에 꼭 들어가서
outcomes with
실제
this one
해보시면
forum.
좋을 것
But if you
같습니다.
are curious, you're welcome to
다음
join
질문은
ClassM
우리
to
김주호
explore.
교수님께
Next,
드리겠습니다.
we'll move on to
교수님
Professor
발표
Kim.
내용 중에 우리 AI가
So within your
우리들의 학습
presentation,
파트너로 작동하는
Mr. Kim talked
과정에서
about
오히려
how
이런 자동화 시스템이
AI is becoming a partner rather than a solution provider. So you also noted that automation can sometimes reduce learning opportunities, the so-called shadow learning.
그러면 저희가 교수님의 이런 말씀을 오늘 귀하게
So based on
들었으니까
your insights today, we want to prevent some of the side effects. So what kind of efforts can we carry out to prevent such unintended effects of shadow learning? I think the previous panelists talked about human-centered approach in education.
교육 현장에서 어떻게 실행할 수
So how to practice that on the ground is critical because we all feel that it is important and there is a consensus established. So how can we make decisions in designing programs for students on the ground? And that's something that all program developers are struggling with. The biggest hurdle is that when we have a lot of technologies, we want to maximize the impacts of technologies and have the rest of them complemented by humans. For example, do you know why there are car accidents? People say human error or people doze off or do not operate technology well. But if you think about it, there are many defects with designing automobile because humans tend to automate everything. They max out the technologies and leave everything else to humans. But not all humans are good at operating machines. That is why we get all the human errors and blame them to all humans. So if we apply the same thing to AI, if we maximize everything that AI can do to automate, then the rest of them, the things that AI cannot do, have to be done by humans. But do they really lead to meaningful growth of students? That's the question that we are grappling with. Recent research says that there is an active adoption of AI in programming. I looked into the changes experienced by developers. Developers overall feel satisfied, but they see reduced time in spending time in meaningful tasks. We expect to see more increases in time that they spend in meaningful tasks, but that's not the case. AI is taking away both repeated and meaningful tasks. For example, drafting or developing algorithms. AI is very good at that. So AI would take away all the important work and leave very tedious work to humans. I also gave an example with surgeons. We have to think about the aftermath and the impacts of automation. So when we think about how to leverage AI, everyone starts with the question, how to max out AI? But they end up with this question, why do we need to automate such tasks? Then we also get this question why we shouldn't automate. We shouldn't automate entire
learning experiences that would leave nothing for humans. We need to specify which area humans can really benefit from. And that's where human connections can occur and interactions can occur. So if we flesh out such areas, we can design the programs to have only human areas and only AI areas. And we also need to make sure that it needs to be human-centered and learner-centered. Professor Kim shared many insights with us, and I feel that because we're doing something meaningful, we get compensated in the world of work. But in the near future, we might have to pay to do something meaningful and important. In the break time, I had a chance to chat with some of the audience here, and I saw some high school students. And if I had the chance to listen to these insightful presentations, I think I could have become a much better person. So lucky to the high school students here for having such insights here. So I would like to provide common questions to all panelists and then open up the floor for later Q&A session.
성공 방정식은 경쟁을 통한 생존이었죠.
So in the past, to win in competition,
진급도 그렇고.
you had to excel. So getting good grades was actually the bulletproof route to success. However, now it's more network-based. One good example is pandemic. In Korea, a lot of people wore masks during pandemic, and we had a very high rate of vaccination. But in Korea, pandemic persisted for 3 years. But why? Because we are living in a highly networked world. It is no longer the problem of one country. Korea was not immune from pandemic because of the highly networked society that we live in with other countries. So we no longer live in an era where one student can excel at everything alone. It has to come from collaboration and communication. But it is no longer only about human-to-human collaboration. Like all of you pointed out, human-AI collaboration is becoming ever more important. So I have a question to our panelists, common question. To build an educational ecosystem where humans and AI co-evolve rather than compete, what do you see as the most urgent challenge in your respective domains?
어떤 것들이 있는지 네분 패널 분들께
So this is a common question for all our 4 panelists. So if you have anything to share, please go ahead.
여기 될 시간이 드려야 되니까 한국 패널 분들께서 혹시 먼저
So
말씀드릴까요?
maybe our Korean panelists first.
오케이. 예.
Or not?
그럼 빨리 답을 하고 넘겨드릴게요.
All right, then I'll be quick.
저는 이제 최근에 회사들이 이제 AI를 어떻게 공격적으로
So
활용하는가.
recently, I've seen a lot of cases where companies are aggressively using AI because companies are oftentimes at the very forefront of these changes.
주목할 만한 또 교육
So
관련된
one notable change in the field regarding education is that
새로운 노동력으로
AI agent
부상하기 시작한다.
is rising as a new workforce, new labor.
아시죠? 그 코로나 때 이제 백신
You know Moderna, right? The pharma company,
인사팀과 IT
the
팀을
HR team and IT team in Moderna actually got merged. I think this is very
많은 기업에서 인사 업무와
noteworthy because
굉장히 다르거든요.
I mean, if you
거리가 되게 먼
look at any
조직인데
company,
이
HR and
두
IT
조직이
are very far apart in
왜냐하면
terms of
하는
their
일이
nature of
똑같다.
work.
똑같냐면
But in
사람
Moderna,
노동력을
these two
관리하는
teams,
그다음에
departments have
AI
emerged
노동력을
because
관리하는 결국 이 노동력이 이제는 사람뿐만 아니라 AI도
they thought that these two teams are actually doing the same thing of managing human workforce and also labor, IT workforce.
성과 관리를 어떻게 할 것인가?
So how are we going to manage humans and manage IT tools?
그래서 결국 이제 사람과 AI가 같이
So
일하는
humans and
이런
AI, since they are working together,
이런 식의
most companies, now we are considering HR and IT as the same teams or as the same departments.
그런 측면에서 봤을 때 이제 제가
So,
뭐 기술 관점에 이제
From
말씀을
this perspective,
드리자면 그런 이제
from technology
학습
standpoint,
상황에서도 굉장히 이제 AI가
even
많이
in
사용되고
learning, AI is being used widely.
개인이 수십 개, 수백 개의 AI 에이전트와 같이
So students
협업도
will
하고
collaborate
일도
with
받고
many
내가
different
AI
AIs
가르치면서
and talk to
저의
AI
이제
and also
학습을
get
다각도로
assistance. And
도움을 주는 이런 AI들이 어떻게 보면
there are many
팀을
AIs
이뤄서
out
저를
there.
도와주는
I mean, there will
그런
be a
그림을
team
우리가
of AI
생각할 수
who will
있는데
help me.
그런 AI들을 우리가 어떻게 관리하고
Then how can we
어떤
manage
식으로 이
these
AI가
AI?
나의 학습과
And
성장에 정말 도움을 주는
how can
형태로
we make
기능할 수
sure that
있도록
these many
설계를 하고
AIs will
관리를 할 수
help
있을까?
me grow
그런
in
부분이
learning and
저는 조금 이제
education?
미래지향적으로 들리실 수 있지만 앞으로 굉장히 중요한
I think
화두가
that
되지
will be
않을까.
a very important question to ask going forward. Thank you, Professor, for the answer. Ms. Howe?
Yeah, I will take a different approach. Very interesting answer, Mr. Kim, Professor Kim. My answer would be misinformation as one of the key challenge in that evolution of human and machine. I'm wondering and pondering, and I'm curious about your thoughts in the room. But how are we going to, as our capacity to trust and knowledge is expected to come more and more from machines that are providing increasingly misinformation to all of us. How will human knowledge evolve as part of this co-evolution? Will be a really interesting area going forward. So, and we see it. We did a study with Stanford students, so arguably very, very smart college students. This ability to decipher what is true or not is becoming extremely complicated, even for the brightest minds on this planet. So our capacity to trust and learn will become increasingly complicated. I think that would be my top challenge.
Thank you. 이사벨 님하고 저희가 이 세션 시작하기 전에도 말씀을 나눴던
Before this session, we actually had a conversation regarding a similar topic.
필요한 내용들을 저희가 어느 정도는 파악을 하고 있는 것 같아요. 근데 또 제도적으로 현실적인
We know
문제점이
what we need to do in the age of AI, but there are also institutional problems.
수능에 잘 안 나오잖아요.
But these are not the questions that we are currently asking in our current education system.
중요한 역량들이라서
But these are important capabilities that we need to think about and also prepare for the future. So how can we redesign our current education system to put more focus in these questions and areas? I think that's one homework for the community.
I think that the question actually is more complicated than answering with one answer. Because I think that I already talked in my slide as well that more questions that will arise is going to get complicated and complex because of AI. And the reason of why collaborative learning is so important in younger generation is also because the problems are going to get more complicated and we need to be able to work together and solve this problem. But I think that a lot of the issues, not just in education, but on a daily basis, it's about who is finishing first and how faster can we solve this problem. And I think that's why with AI, people are encountering that in learning that things can be solved faster, but kind of forgetting why we need to step back a little bit, think more, and then talk to each other and then get back together instead of collecting the information right away. And I think that's why education in younger generation is so much more important in this collaborative learning sector. And as I've already explained before, a lot of the problems would not be able to be solved alone, not just like one person, not just one country, but the whole global community together. And I think we're also experiencing it like vice versa in a good way of having this K-pop culture kind of dominating the whole globe right now is a good phenomena of spreading the information faster. But at the same time, we're going to experience the downfall of the fast spreading of culture or information and so on. And what information is biased or not is going to be more difficult for us to figure out with AI. And I think that this is not a clear answer to the question, but I think that it just gives me more glimpse of like emphasizing more on collaborative learning feature, problem-based learning is getting more important inside the education system.
네, 저희가 AI 기술 덕분에
Yes.
프로세스는 훨씬 빨라졌지만
Everything is faster because of AI,
답변을 들으면서
Ms. Che said.
문득 생각나는 책 제목이
So one book came to my mind.
비로소 보이는 것들.
Things that we can only see when we stop and pause. That's the title of a Korean book. So sometimes we shouldn't obsess with speed. We have to take a step back, like Ms. Che said, and ask fundamental questions.
양면적인 부분들을 같이
We always have to weigh pros and cons and try to be as critical as possible.
Please answer to the question.
Professor Rodrigo, please.
I think I have a soft spot for teachers. So I think that one of the ways where we can really help redesign education with the help of AI is to find ways to make AI supportive of teachers, whether that be in the process of planning lessons, finding resources, developing innovative approaches to education, or just generally with teacher professional development. Because one of the situations that we're in, those of us in developing countries, is that we have an acute shortage of teachers. We also have a shortage of learning materials, books, blackboards, chalk, computers, of course. So in many cases, and then of course you have too many students, more students than schools can handle. So in many cases, teachers are really the single source of information and learning for students. They don't have other resources at their disposal. So if we can find a way to support teachers by giving them these tools, training them how to use these tools to improve themselves before we even pass them on to students, let's use AI to help teachers become better. And then maybe it ties into what Isabel was saying about building relationships, fostering this learning community, connections between people. But equipping our teachers, I think, is a very big step.
Thank you. 마리아 교수님 답변을 들으면서
listening to Professor Rodrigo's answer, an idea came to my mind. With the rise of AI agents,
AI 에이전트를 하나씩 쓸 때마다
maybe
형식의 조교가 탄생하는 효과가 있으면
we can
좋겠다라는
help
생각도
with the help of AI. We can have more teaching assistants, AI teaching assistants for every classroom. If that can happen, it will be really helpful for teachers. So for our common question number 1, all our panelists took turns and answered. So any final comments to make, our panelists?
You want to add any additional final comment before we closing? 네. 저희가 오늘 토론을 통해서
So today we
결국
had
이
this
AI
fruitful
시대
panel
교육이
discussion,
단순히
and we
기술적인
learned that
문제만이 아니라
education in the era of
관계의
AI
재설계이고
will need to
인간의
redesign our
회복이라는
human
점을
connections
네 분의
and
패널분들의
see
말씀을
restorations
통해서
with
다시 확인할
human
수 있는 계기가
interactions.
됐었던 것
That was
같습니다.
proven
그래서
by 4 of
AI가
our
가르치는
presentations.
사람과
So
배우는 사람의 관계를 대체하는 존재가
AI is not
아니라
going to replace the
깊은
relationship between a
이해와
learner and an
성찰을
educator,
끌어내는
but rather
학습의
derive
동반자가
in-depth
되어야
and
된다라는
deeper
측면에서
insights.
말씀을
AI
많이 주신
should
것
be
같습니다.
partners
네
in
분
restoring such
패널분들께
relationship.
감사 말씀드리고요.
Thank you once again to
오늘
all
논의가
four panelists.
APEC
I
회원국들
sincerely hope
간의 교육
that
협력
today's
그리고
discussion
혁신의 방향을
can
함께 여는
lead
좋은
to
계기가 되기를
collective
바랍니다.
growth and
오늘
partnership
세션은 여기서
among
마치도록
APEC
하겠습니다.
countries.
고맙습니다.
Thank you so
네,
much for
너무
your
감사합니다.
participation.
아직 시간적인 여유가
So
조금
we still
있어서요.
have some
한번
time
플로어
left.
Q&A
So why don't we
한번
open up
받아보도록
the floor
하겠습니다.
for
오늘 정말 좋은
questions or
말씀을
comments?
해주셨는데 혹시 질문 있으신
Do we
분은
have
손을
any
들어주시면
questions
마이크를
from the floor? Please raise your hand and we will hand you the microphone.
네, 마이크가
Yes, the
제가 전달해드려도
microphone is coming at you. Maybe
여기
we have a hand up in the front.
네, 오늘 큰 인사이트를 주신
Thank you so much to all four panelists for your insights.
한번 더 전합니다. 네, 저는 조금은
I
제 작은 경험이지만
have
3년
very
전부터
little
이제
experiences,
인공지능을
but
학습에
3 years ago
많은
I
활용을
started
해야겠다라는 것을
to
조금은
apply AI in
의무적으로
my
강요를
teaching.
줬고,
I was
나름은
actually
시도를
forced
해보았습니다.
externally, so I gave it a try. So 3 years ago, I went on an AI website simultaneously with my students, so I tried an AI writing exercise. So students went on this website and the AI would evaluate their writing.
A라는 학생은
For example,
10세 정도의 글쓰기를 하고 있고
student A has a 10-year-old writing skill, or his literacy is what age and whatnot. So evaluation indicators were shown to me. So students asked me like, "What's my score? Can you tell me like how I did?"
그렇게 해서 인공지능을 활용하다 보니까 그 3년
So I
전에
learned that
저도 인공지능 속에 들어가 있고
I
딸도
became
인공지능 속에 들어가 있고 모두
a
그
part of the AI, and everyone was part of EduTech. We were just
제가
only
그
staring
수업을
at
하고 나서
EduTech.
뭔가 너무나
So after the
답답한
lesson,
것이었습니다.
after the
그래서 그
class,
다음 해에
I felt
그
very
친구들한테
frustrated.
너무
So next year,
미안하지만
I felt
그
very
다음
sorry to
해에
the
이제
previous group,
들어가서
but
제한 시간
next year,
2시간만
I
봐라.
set limits in time, so only 2
소통하고
hours were allowed to stay within that website.
2-3시간 정도에는
And the rest,
아무 도움도
and the
없이
next 2 to 3
조용하게
hours
인공지능과
were given
소통하는
to
중심으로 너희들이 앞으로 살아가야 되는데 중요한
write
가치관은 무엇인지 하나를 뽑고
their own
글을
values.
써줘라고
So
했더니
please draft an essay on their values. And after utilizing AI, the students were able to provide deeper outcome and outputs. So I learned that
마음에 드는 문장을 체크해달라고 했더니
I asked them to highlight very meaningful sentences to them, and everyone actually wanted me to take a look at their essay. They were quite proud. So after reading students' essays, I learned that when students interact with AI, they ultimately end up with the outcome that shows their interaction within themselves. And I could see that each individual had put in a lot of efforts in drafting essays, so I was quite impressed. Everyone became an author to their life. So my introduction was quite long, but after such trials, I had a series of evaluation criteria, such as the essay quality and the length of the essay. So I am struggling as to how to evaluate each student's essay. Let's say the student was able to ramp up their level from 0 to 50, and some students only increased only 20. So in the era of AI, what kind of capabilities should a teacher have? Please throw me a keyword, and I would deeply appreciate your input.
네, 질문도 너무 좋고
Wow, what an
공유해 주신
amazing
사례도 너무
question.
좋고요. 제가
I
강연에서
loved your
말씀드린 학습
examples.
경험을 설계하는
And
그
you
작업을
are
공유를
thinking
해주신 것 같아서
a lot
제가
about
많이 배운 것 같아요.
designing the
하나의
entire
키워드
learning
말씀을
process.
주셨는데
You
저는
asked
이
me to
격차에
give you a
대한
single keyword.
어떤 관심과 모니터링.
So I am quite interested in monitoring the gaps and disparities among students. When people said AI will be integrated into education, they expected that those falling behind can catch up quicker than before with the technologies. But after the introduction of AI, we actually saw bigger gaps and bigger disparities among students. Those who can leverage AI technologies can do much better, whereas those who cannot will continue to fall behind. So we see rising gaps. And I think that would depend on the actual teaching experience, but I think one of the key teachers' capabilities in the era of AI is that teachers need to pay closer attention to students' learning gaps. You need to be able to tailor each learning process, tailor to the student's progress. So you need to come up with various solutions to narrow such gaps. Thank you so much for the question and answer. I really appreciate your question.
테스트를 하는 평가를 하는
When we have a test, we need to change the framework of testing. We decided to use AI, then we should not test knowledge, but rather the thought process, the thought structure. I think we need a paradigm shift there. For example, at my university, Seoul National University, this is the paradigm that I take. First, we have 3 total steps. First,
수업 시간에 배운 내용 중에서
I first test on the content of what they learned instead of giving out summaries.
가장 핵심적인
What is
내용을 질문을 만들게.
key aspect of the content, but you need to write out a question that asks the key concept of the content. So that's the first step. Second step,
질문을 러닝 매니지먼트 시스템에 올리게 한 다음에
so after sending up the questions to the learning management system, you give answers to the most important question, and you actually utilize AI in coming up with the answers. And third step is to
AI를 활용해서 쓴
use AI and see the AI used answers and utilize your critical thinking. So revise such answers and improve them based on your reasoning. And you need to back up with literature review or evidence. In the past, we only gave the questions and answers, but with the adoption of AI, we need to transform the way we evaluate students' performance. If not, there will be conflicts between what they teach, what you teach, and what students learn. I think that's one of the good approaches you can have.
교수님이 해주셨던 거에 이제 집합체일 수도 있을 것 같아요. 이제
I think this resonates with what the other professors said, but our company focuses on creating evaluation grading systems. So we provide 2 things. First, in college environment, we create a rubric for professors. We help professors develop a grading rubric. And second, in companies, we help the companies evaluate employees and also how they can reskill their existing employees. So we develop an evaluation system for employees. So looking at the evaluation area, like Professor Kim pointed out, there is an area of AI automation, and also there are additional areas that only humans can do. So when it comes to evaluation, we need to make sure that we give right prompts to the AI so the AI can automate properly. But at the same time, we also have to verify the results generated by AI. So those 2 are different areas. So one assessment that we provide to companies is work with AI. So we divide this work with AI assessment into 7 different stages. The most important one here is identifying the problem. So can I identify the problem? And after identifying the problem, how did I apply AI and how did I get the result that I wanted? So those are the ways that companies evaluate employees. So yes, companies are using AI to evaluate their employees this way. And another area that we were successful with colleges is that professors told us that when they use AI one-on-one, then it's hard to use. So rather than one-on-one AI application, professors prefer to use AI in group projects. So professors want to see how in group projects students use AI in conversations and prompting. So not one-on-one usage, but group use cases are actually more common in colleges. So it was a very good case of AI application. So it taught us there are areas that AI can be good at, and there are other areas that humans can be good at still.
구체적인 내용이 궁금하신 분들은
So,
클래스썸에
like I said, if you need more details, please join ClassSum.
일단 추가적인
So yes, because of time limit, we are going to wrap up here. Thank you so much, everyone, for the questions.
다시 한번 큰 박수.
Another big round of applause to our panelists and moderator, everyone.
네, 이것으로 2025 K-Edu Expo.
All right, then we will wrap up day 2 of 2025 K-Edu Expo International Education Forum.
교육을 성찰하다라는 대주제 아래
So rethinking life and rethinking education in the age of AI, we thought about new directions and new roles. Creativity, autonomy, critical thinking, equity, human relationships,
강화 등과 같은
empowering humans. These have been the keywords of our discussions today.
돌아가셔서 우리 교육 현장에 꼭 활용해
So when you return to your classroom or when you return to your work, please think about these concepts and please continue to explore these ideas in your work. Thank you so much, and once again, please participate in our satisfaction survey.
함께 해주신 연사분들의 저서가 준비가 되어
And then at the
있습니다.
entrance, we have the books authored by our panelists. So thank you so much for staying with us. Please have them as your souvenir. So we'll officially close the forum here. Thank you so much. I have been Kim Tae-yeon, the MC for your forum today.
네, 안내 말씀드립니다. 지금 가지고 계시는 자료집과 펜은요, 여러분들 가지고 가셔도 좋습니다. 그리고 다시 한번 안내 말씀드립니다. 입구에서 연사분들의 저서가 준비가 되어 있으니까요. 그것 또한 잊지 마시고 꼭 챙겨가시기 바랍니다. 날씨가 매우 춥습니다. 감기 조심하시고요. 늘 언제나 건강과 평안히 함께하기를 기원하겠습니다. 감사합니다.